The transformation from mortal being into demon prince represents one of the most profound metamorphoses possible within the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. This elevation stands as the ultimate reward offered by the ruinous powers to their most devoted servants, yet it remains an exceedingly rare occurrence. Among the countless billions who pledge themselves to chaos across the galaxy, only a handful will ever achieve this apotheosis. The path to demonhood demands more than simple worship or occasional service. It requires absolute dedication that consumes every aspect of the aspirant's existence, reshaping their very identity around the whims and nature of their patron deity. The requirements for ascension vary depending on which of the dark gods a champion serves, though certain fundamental elements remain constant. A prospective demon prince must first distinguish themselves through extraordinary acts that exemplify their patron's domain. For Khorne, this means an unending tide of bloodshed and martial prowess that eclipses all rivals. The blood god demands that his champions wade through oceans of gore, claiming skulls beyond counting while demonstrating supreme skill in combat. Tzeentch requires elaborate schemes that reshape the fate of worlds, manipulations so intricate and far-reaching that they alter the course of history itself. Nurgle seeks the spread of pestilence on a scale that transforms entire star systems into plague-ridden wastelands, while Slaanesh demands experiences and sensations so extreme they transcend mortal comprehension. The sheer magnitude of service required cannot be overstated. A champion might slaughter entire planetary populations, orchestrate the corruption of space marine chapters, or engineer the fall of subsectors spanning dozens of worlds. These acts must continue across decades or even centuries, building a reputation that resonates through both real space and the warp. The Chaos Gods observe their servants constantly, measuring their devotion against the endless competition of other champions. At any given moment, thousands of warlords, sorcerers, and corrupted warriors believe themselves worthy of elevation, yet the gods remain capricious and their favor fleeting. The actual moment of transformation occurs only when a chaos god consciously chooses to bestow their ultimate gift. This decision follows no predictable pattern or timeline. Some champions receive demonhood after a single act of such monumental significance that it captures their patron's full attention. Others labor for millennia without recognition, their countless atrocities insufficient to stand out among the cosmic din of chaos. The gods themselves operate according to motivations that transcend mortal understanding. What might seem like guaranteed ascension to a champion could be dismissed as trivial by their divine patron, while an unexpected action might suddenly spark the interest required for transformation. The distinction between willing and unwilling ascension reveals the complex relationship between the Chaos Gods and their servants. Most champions actively pursue demonhood with single-minded obsession. These aspirants structure their entire existence around earning their patron's favor, viewing mortality as a prison from which they desperately seek escape. They study the examples of those who achieved ascension before them, attempting to replicate or surpass those legendary deeds. The willing path represents a conscious rejection of humanity, or whatever species the champion originally belonged to, an embrace of chaos so complete that the aspirant genuinely desires to become something fundamentally inhuman. Unwilling transformation presents a darker mirror to this process. The Chaos Gods possess a cruel sense of humor, and they occasionally elevate servants who never sought such a fate. These forced ascensions typically occur as punishment for failure, cosmic jest, or simply because a particular god finds amusement in the irony. A champion who betrays their patron might find themselves elevated not as reward, but as eternal imprisonment within a demonic form that embodies their transgression. Others receive demonhood despite actively resisting chaos corruption, their very resistance making them interesting enough to warrant transformation. The dark gods care nothing for the desires of mortals. A servant who wishes to remain human might be granted immortality precisely because their horror at the transformation entertains their patron. The physical process of becoming a demon prince defies conventional understanding of biology or physics. When a chaos god decides to elevate a champion, the transformation begins at the metaphysical level before manifesting in reality. The champion's soul, already corrupted by years of service to chaos, becomes the anchor point for the change. Warp energy floods into the mortal form, not merely altering it, but fundamentally rewriting the laws that govern its existence. The boundary between the material universe and the Immaterium grows thin around the transforming champion, reality itself bending to accommodate what is about to occur. The mortal flesh dissolves, though this description fails to capture the true horror of the process. Skin, muscle, bone, and organs don't simply melt away, they cease to follow the rules that define matter. The champion's physical form becomes simultaneously solid and incorporeal, existing in a state of flux between real space and the warp. This dissolution causes agony beyond mortal comprehension, every nerve ending screaming as it transcends its original purpose. Yet the pain serves as part of the transformation itself, burning away the last vestiges of mortality and preparing the champion's essence for what comes next. During this liminal state, the champion experiences the warp directly without the protection of physical form. Their consciousness expands and fragments simultaneously, touching the infinite chaos of the Immaterium while struggling to maintain cohesion. The thoughts, emotions, and psychic resonance of countless beings crash against their awareness. They perceive the currents of the warp, the great game played by the chaos gods, and the true nature of the universe stripped of comforting illusions. Many champions describe this moment as simultaneously enlightening and maddening, though their accounts vary wildly depending on which god claims them. The reformation process draws directly from the warp itself. Demonic essence, the same fundamental energy that comprises demons native to the Immaterium, flows into the dissolving mortal form. This essence binds with the champion's soul, creating a hybrid existence that partakes of both demon and the champion's original nature. Unlike true demons who are purely creatures of the warp, demon princes retain the core of their mortal identity. Their memories, skills, and personality persist through the transformation, though inevitably warped by their new existence. A demon prince of Tzeentch, who was once a powerful sorcerer, retains their knowledge of arcane lore, but that knowledge now operates through the lens of demonic perception and power. The new form that emerges reflects both the champion's nature and their patron deity's domain. Khorne demon princes manifest as towering engines of destruction, their bodies rippling with unnatural muscle and bristling with horns, claws, and fangs. Wings of brass and iron might sprout from their backs, and their skin often takes on the color of dried blood or blackened brass. Nurgle's chosen become bloated mockeries of life, their flesh simultaneously rotting and regenerating in an endless cycle. Pustules, exposed organs, and clouds of flies accompany these transformations. Tzeentch grants forms that defy stable description, bodies that shift and change according to unknowable patterns, often incorporating multiple limbs, eyes that see through time, and skin that displays impossible colors. Slaanesh creates demon princes of terrible beauty and excess, beings whose appearance simultaneously attracts and repulses, embodying perfection twisted into something fundamentally wrong. The binding of demonic essence to the mortal soul creates permanent changes that extend beyond mere physical transformation. A demon prince becomes immortal in the truest sense. They cannot die through conventional means. Destroying their physical form merely banishes them back to the warp, where they will eventually reform. This immortality comes with significant limitations, however. The demon prince remains bound to their patron deity absolutely and eternally. They cannot switch allegiances or reject chaos even if they wish to do so. Their existence depends entirely on their god's continued favor, and that favor can be withdrawn at any moment. The competitive nature of earning elevation shapes the behavior of chaos champions across the galaxy. Every warlord leading a black crusade, every corrupted space marine fighting in the name of the dark gods, and every mortal cultist dreams of catching their patron's eye. This competition drives champions to ever greater extremes of devotion and atrocity. They don't merely fight the Imperium or other enemies of chaos, they fight each other for the right to claim glory in their god's name. Betrayal among chaos forces occurs constantly, with champions sabotaging rivals or stealing credit for victories in hopes of distinguishing themselves. The chaos gods actively encourage this competition. They view their champions as pieces in an endless game, valuable only insofar as they provide entertainment or advance their patrons' interests in the great game against the other ruinous powers. A champion who grows too comfortable or complacent quickly finds themselves replaced by hungrier rivals. The gods deliberately create situations where multiple champions compete for the same objective, knowing that the resulting conflict will produce either a clear victor worthy of reward or an amusing spectacle of mutual destruction. This system ensures that only the most capable, ruthless, and dedicated servants ever reach the threshold of potential ascension. Each of the ruinous powers demands different qualities from those who would ascend to demonhood in their name. The transformation into a demon prince reflects not just the power of the patron deity, but the specific nature of service that earned their favor. Understanding these four distinct paths reveals the fundamental character of the dark gods themselves and the price their champions pay for immortality. Khorne, the blood god, maintains the most straightforward requirements for ascension. His demon princes emerge from the galaxy's most accomplished killers, warriors who have drowned worlds in blood and claimed skulls beyond counting. The path to becoming one of Khorne's exalted demands absolute martial supremacy, combined with an endless appetite for slaughter. A champion of the blood god cannot simply kill, they must dominate in personal combat, crushing opponents through superior skill and savage strength. Khorne despises weakness and cowardice above all else, and any warrior seeking his favor must prove themselves again and again in direct confrontation. The collection of skulls serves as the primary measure of devotion to Khorne. These trophies represent more than simple body counts. Each skull must be taken from a worthy opponent, claimed in honorable combat rather than through cowardly ambush or ranged warfare. Khorne values the skulls of powerful psychers, mighty heroes, and skilled warriors far above those of common soldiers. A champion might slaughter millions of Imperial guardsmen without earning significant recognition, while defeating a single Space Marine chapter master in single combat could elevate their standing considerably. The Blood God watches his champions constantly, judging not just the quantity of kills, but their quality and the manner in which they were achieved. Martial prowess forms the second pillar of Khornate ascension. The Blood God grants his favor to those who perfect the arts of war, who understand combat at an instinctive level that transcends mere training. His champions must demonstrate mastery of weapons, an understanding of tactics that serves the purpose of maximum bloodshed, and the physical might to overwhelm any opponent. Khorne cares nothing for sorcery or manipulation. He demands that his servants prove their worth through personal strength and skill. A Khornate champion who relies on others to fight their battles, or who uses trickery instead of direct confrontation, will never achieve demonhood, regardless of how many deaths they cause. The transformation into a demon prince of Khorne produces beings of terrifying physical power. These ascended warriors tower over mortal men, their bodies sheathed in brass-colored skin harder than ceramite armor. Massive horns crown their skulls, and their hands end in claws capable of tearing through tank armor. Many manifest wings of brass and bone, allowing them to descend upon battlefields like avatars of slaughter. Their strength increases to levels that allow them to tear apart battle tanks with their bare hands, while their speed and reflexes surpass even the enhanced capabilities of Space Marines. Every aspect of their form serves the purpose of killing, with no weakness or vulnerability remaining from their mortal existence. Doombreed stands among the most ancient and powerful of Khorne's demon princes. His origins trace back to ancient Terra during the Age of Terra, long before the Emperor unified humanity's birth world. The exact identity of the mortal who became Doombreed remains lost to history, though legends suggest he was a conqueror whose atrocities and military genius earned Khorne's favor during humanity's darkest ages. His elevation occurred so long ago that he predates the Immaterium itself by millennia. Doombreed's power exceeds that of nearly all other demon princes, and Khorne himself holds this ancient killer in high regard. When summoned to real space, Doombreed leads armies of Khornate demons and mortal followers, his presence on a battlefield often deciding the outcome through sheer destructive force. Angron represents a unique case among demon princes, a Primarch who fell to chaos and received the dubious gift of demonhood. The Primarch of the World Eater's Legion already embodied Khorne's values before his transformation. The butcher's nails implanted in his brain during his youth on Nuceria drove him toward constant violence, and his gladiatorial past made him a peerless warrior. Following the Horus Heresy, Angron's rage and the countless skulls claimed by him and his legion finally earned Khorne's ultimate reward. His transformation occurred in the 31st millennium, and the process turned the already formidable Primarch into something far more terrifying. As a demon prince, Angron commands legions of world eaters and Khornate demons, leading them in crusades of slaughter across the galaxy. His presence radiates such fury that mortals near him often lose control of their own rage, becoming berserk killers themselves. Tzeentch, the architect of fate, seeks entirely different qualities in those he elevates. The Changer of Ways values cunning over strength, manipulation over direct confrontation, and long-term schemes over immediate gratification. His demon princes emerge from the ranks of sorcerers, manipulators, and visionaries who demonstrate the ability to reshape reality according to their will. Where Khorne demands straightforward slaughter, Tzeentch requires baroque complexity. A champion of the Changer of Ways must orchestrate events across decades or centuries, setting in motion chains of causality that ultimately serve their patron's unknowable purposes. Psychic power forms the foundation of Tzeentchian ascension. The architect of fate shows particular favor to those who master sorcery, who delve into forbidden knowledge and emerge with the ability to bend the warp to their purposes. Tzeentch values innovation in magical practice, the discovery of new spells and rituals, and the corruption of others through the promise of arcane secrets. A sorcerer seeking his favor must push the boundaries of what is possible with warp craft, experimenting with dangerous techniques that lesser practitioners would consider suicidal. The pursuit of knowledge itself serves as worship to Tzeentch, particularly when that knowledge transforms the seeker in fundamental ways. The manipulation of fate and the execution of grand schemes represent the second requirement for Tzeentchian elevation. The architect of fate rewards those who think in terms of centuries rather than years, who can perceive how small actions cascade into world-changing consequences. A champion of Tzeentch might spend decades corrupting a single individual, knowing that person will eventually betray their allies at a crucial moment. They orchestrate the fall of governments, the corruption of institutions, and the subtle redirection of historical currents. Tzeentch particularly values schemes that contain multiple layers of deception, where the apparent goal masks deeper purposes, and where success and failure both advance the champion's true objectives. Mutation serves as both gift and mark of Tzeentch's favor. Unlike the other Chaos gods who grant relatively stable transformations, the Changer of Ways constantly alters his followers. Champions of Tzeentch undergo frequent mutations throughout their service, their bodies shifting and changing according to their patron's whims. These changes might grant additional limbs, extra eyes that perceive different spectrums of reality, or stranger alterations that defy easy description. By the time a Tzeentchian sorcerer approaches demonhood, they often bear little resemblance to their original form, having been reshaped dozens or hundreds of times. The transformation into a demon prince of Tzeentch produces beings of impossible complexity. Their forms refuse to remain stable, constantly shifting through different configurations. They might possess multiple arms that appear and disappear, faces that form and dissolve across their bodies, or limbs that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Wings of pure warp energy allow them to fly, while their skin displays colors that have no name in mortal languages. The psychic power of a Tzeentchian demon prince far exceeds what they wielded as mortals, granting them the ability to reshape reality through will alone, peer through time to glimpse possible futures, and cast sorceries that can level cities or corrupt entire populations. Nurgle, Grandfather Nurgle, the Lord of Decay, offers a path to demonhood that revolves around acceptance rather than ambition. The Plague God elevates those who embrace the fundamental truth of entropy, that all things must decay, that death comes for everything, and that resistance to this reality causes only suffering. His champions emerge from those who have looked into the abyss of despair and found strange comfort there. Unlike the aggressive pursuit required by Khorne or the scheming demanded by Tzeentch, Nurgle's path involves surrender to inevitability and the spreading of this revelation to others. The embrace of decay forms the philosophical foundation of Nurglite ascension. Champions of the Plague God must genuinely accept their own mortality and corruption, finding joy in the processes of rot and disease. This acceptance goes beyond mere tolerance. It requires a fundamental shift in perspective where the champion sees beauty in decay, finds humor in suffering, and recognizes the cycle of death and rebirth as the universe's greatest truth. Nurgle rewards those who have moved beyond despair into a state of diseased contentment, who laugh as their flesh rots, and who see plague as a gift to be shared rather than a curse to be endured. The spreading of disease serves as the primary act of worship for Nurgle's followers. His champions must become vectors for plagues that transform entire worlds into gardens of decay. These are not simple diseases, but supernatural afflictions that blend warp corruption with biological infection. A champion of Nurgle might engineer plagues that cause victims to continue functioning even as their bodies rot away, or diseases that spread through faith itself rather than physical contact. The scale matters tremendously. Nurgle expects his champions to infect populations numbering in the billions, to create new strains of plague that resist all attempts at treatment, and to reduce thriving worlds to pestilential wastelands. The gifts of immortality through disease represent Nurgle's particular form of generosity. Even before ascension, his champions often become so thoroughly infected that they should be dead by any rational measure. Their bodies host dozens of diseases simultaneously, their organs fail and regenerate in endless cycles, and their flesh becomes home to countless parasites and infections. Yet they continue to function, kept alive by Nurgle's power. This immortality through decay serves as a preview of demonhood. The champion learns to exist in a state between life and death, their body a walking contradiction that defies natural law. Transformation into a demon prince of Nurgle produces beings of grotesque vitality. Their bodies swell to enormous size, bloated with disease and supernatural resilience. Rotting flesh hangs from their frames, constantly regenerating even as it decays. Organs spill from wounds that never fully close, and clouds of flies accompany their every movement. Despite their appearance of decay, these demon princes possess incredible durability. They can sustain damage that would destroy other beings, their corrupted flesh knitting back together or simply continuing to function despite catastrophic injuries. They radiate disease, their mere presence causing crops to wither, water to become toxic, and living beings to sicken and die. Slaanesh, the Dark Prince, demands excess in all things from those who would become demon princes in the god's name. The youngest of the Chaos gods attracts perfectionists, hedonists, and those who pursue sensation beyond all reasonable limits. The path to Slaaneshi ascension involves pushing every experience to its absolute extreme, transcending the boundaries that normally constrain mortal behavior. Where other gods demand specific types of service, Slaanesh accepts any form of excess so long as it reaches sufficient intensity. The pursuit of perfection forms one route to Slaanesh's favor. Champions following this path obsess over mastering a particular skill or art, driving themselves beyond mortal limits in their quest for flawless execution. A warrior might spend centuries perfecting a single sword technique, repeating the motion millions of times until it achieves a beauty that transcends mere combat effectiveness. An artist might create works of such intense emotional power that viewers go mad from exposure. A musician might compose pieces that physically alter reality through their perfection. Slaanesh rewards this obsessive dedication when it crosses the line from mere excellence into something that consumes the practitioner's entire existence. Hedonism and the pursuit of sensation represent the more commonly understood path to Slaaneshi demonhood. The Dark Prince grants favor to those who experience everything reality offers and then demand more. These champions exhaust every form of pleasure available to mortals and turn to increasingly extreme and twisted experiences. They host feasts where the food itself is prepared from still living victims, orgies that last for weeks and leave participants permanently altered, and gladiatorial games where the suffering of losers provides entertainment measured in screams. The key lies not in any particular act, but in the relentless escalation. Each experience must surpass the previous one. Each sensation must be more intense, until the champion exists in a state of constant overstimulation. The transformation into a demon prince of Slaanesh creates beings of terrible beauty and profound horror. Their forms embody contradictions, simultaneously attractive and repulsive, elegant and obscene, perfect and corrupt. They might possess faces of inhuman beauty marred by disturbing features, bodies that display physical perfection twisted into unnatural configurations, or voices that entrance listeners while driving them toward madness. Many manifest multiple limbs, claws capable of inflicting exquisite pain, or sensory organs that perceive reality in ways that would shatter mortal minds. Their presence overwhelms the senses of those nearby, inducing states of rapture, terror, or both simultaneously. The ascension to demonhood through service to chaos undivided represents one of the rarest and most politically complex paths available to champions of the ruinous powers. While most servants of chaos dedicate themselves entirely to a single patron deity, a select few manage to earn elevation through balanced service to all four dark gods simultaneously. This status requires walking a razor's edge between competing divine interests, maintaining enough favor with each god to justify the gift of demonhood while avoiding the ire that comes from divided loyalty. The chaos gods typically view their servants as exclusive property, and they rarely share willingly. A champion seeking undivided ascension must therefore prove themselves so valuable that all four powers agree their elevation serves everyone's interests, or demonstrate such exceptional qualities that the gods compete to claim partial patronage rather than lose the champion entirely. The political complexity inherent in undivided status begins long before the actual transformation occurs. A champion pursuing this path cannot simply perform acts that please one god while ignoring the others. They must structure their entire campaign of atrocity to generate favor across all four domains simultaneously. A military conquest might satisfy Khorne through bloodshed, but the champion must also incorporate Tzeentchian scheming in their strategy, spread Nurglite plagues among enemy populations, and indulge in Slaaneshi excess during victory celebrations. This balancing act demands extraordinary awareness of what each god values and the ability to frame actions in ways that appeal to multiple patrons at once. The actual mechanics of maintaining balanced favor create constant challenges. The chaos gods exist in a state of perpetual competition known as the Great Game, where each power seeks to advance their interests at the expense of the others. A champion who serves all four becomes entangled in this cosmic conflict, their actions potentially shifting the balance of power in ways that attract divine attention. Performing a deed that significantly benefits one god might anger the others, who see their share of the champion's devotion diminishing. The champion must therefore carefully calibrate their service, ensuring no single deity gains too much influence over their soul, while preventing any god from feeling sufficiently neglected to withdraw their favor entirely. The advantages of achieving undivided status, however, make this precarious path worthwhile for those capable of maintaining it. A demon prince undivided enjoys far greater freedom of action than their dedicated counterparts. Where a demon prince of Khorne must constantly seek battle and bloodshed to maintain their patron's favor, and a Tzeentchian prince remains bound to endless scheming, an undivided prince can shift their focus as circumstances demand. They might lead military campaigns when warfare serves their purposes, engage in sorcerous manipulation when subtlety proves more effective, spread disease to weaken entrenched enemies, or pursue excess when consolidating power over corrupted populations. This flexibility allows them to adapt to changing situations in ways that dedicated princes cannot, making them formidable opponents who refuse to be predictable. Access to gifts from multiple gods provides tremendous tactical and strategic advantages. A demon prince undivided might possess the martial prowess and physical might associated with Khorne's blessings, combined with sorcerous abilities granted by Tzeentch, the supernatural resilience that comes from Nurgle's favor, and the enhanced speed and sensory acuity that Slaanesh provides. This combination of abilities creates beings far more versatile than dedicated demon princes. In combat, an undivided prince can match the raw destructive power of Khornate champions, while also wielding sorcery that would make Tzeentchian princes envious. They heal from wounds with Nurglite persistence and move with Slaaneshi grace. No single aspect of their power reaches the heights achieved by dedicated princes in their specific domains, but the synthesis of multiple divine gifts creates a whole greater than the sum of its parts. The reduced vulnerability to God-specific weaknesses represents another significant advantage. Demon princes dedicated to individual gods inherit not just their patron strengths, but also their limitations and blind spots. Khornate princes possess overwhelming physical power, but remain vulnerable to sorcery and manipulation, their straightforward nature making them susceptible to complex schemes. Tzeentchian princes excel at planning and magic, but often lack the direct combat capability to survive against determined physical assault. Nurglite princes endure tremendous punishment, but move slowly and lack the initiative to seize fleeting opportunities. Slaaneshi princes pursue perfection, but become obsessed with specific goals to the exclusion of practical concerns. An undivided prince, by contrast, possesses enough gifts from each god to shore up the weaknesses inherent in any single path. They can fight when necessary, scheme when advantageous, endure when required, and adapt when circumstances shift. The disadvantages and challenges of undivided status, however, remain substantial and explain why so few champions successfully achieve or maintain this position. The most immediate problem lies in the reduced favor from any single deity. The Chaos Gods grant their greatest gifts to those who serve them exclusively, reserving their most powerful blessings for champions who demonstrate absolute dedication. An undivided prince receives only a portion of each god's favor, meaning they never access the full spectrum of abilities available to dedicated servants. A demon prince of Khorne might grow to titanic size with strength that allows them to tear apart titans, while an undivided prince receives enough physical enhancement to exceed mortal limits but falls short of such extreme power. This pattern repeats across all 4 domains. The undivided prince remains competent in multiple areas, but rarely achieves mastery in any single one. The constant need to balance competing divine interests creates an exhausting existence that never ends. The Chaos Gods do not simply grant demonhood and then forget about their servants. They expect ongoing devotion, continued service, and regular demonstrations of loyalty. For an undivided prince, this means perpetually juggling the demands of 4 masters who actively work against each other. Khorne might demand the prince lead a military campaign that requires straightforward slaughter, but Tzeentch simultaneously expects the same prince to execute a subtle scheme that necessitates restraint and manipulation. Nurgle wants the spread of disease that takes time to cultivate and spread, while Slaanesh craves immediate excess and sensation. The prince must find ways to satisfy all 4 or risk losing the favor that sustains their existence. This balancing act extends to the undivided prince's followers and resources. Mortal cultists, chaos space marines, and demon servants all typically dedicate themselves to specific gods. An undivided prince must maintain forces loyal to each patron while preventing these factions from turning on each other. Khornate berserkers despise Tzeentchian sorcerers, who in turn view Nurglite plague bearers with contempt, while Slaaneshi devotees consider all the others crude and unsophisticated. Managing these competing factions requires diplomatic skills and constant intervention to prevent the prince's own forces from destroying each other before they can be directed against external enemies. The jealousy of dedicated demon princes represents a persistent external threat. Champions who have devoted themselves entirely to a single god often view undivided princes as dilettantes and oath breakers who lack the purity of purpose that true service demands. Khornate princes see them as cowards who refuse to commit fully to the path of the warrior. Tzeentchian princes consider them intellectually inferior, incapable of the focus required for proper scheming. Nurglite princes view them as denying the fundamental truth of entropy by trying to serve multiple masters. Slaaneshi princes regard them as lacking the dedication to pursue anything to its ultimate extreme. This contempt translates into active opposition, with dedicated princes often going out of their way to undermine, challenge, or destroy undivided counterparts when opportunities arise. The political isolation that comes with undivided status compounds these challenges. The great legions and warbands of chaos typically organize around dedication to specific gods. The World Eaters serve Khorne exclusively, the Thousand Sons belong to Tzeentch, the Death Guard follow Nurgle, and the Emperor's children worship Slaanesh. An undivided prince cannot fully integrate into any of these established power structures. They must build their own followings from scratch, recruiting from the smaller number of warriors who themselves serve chaos undivided, or who can be convinced to abandon their single god devotion. This limits their access to resources, allies, and support networks that dedicated princes take for granted. Be'lakor stands as the most significant example of an undivided demon prince, though his status remains unique, and his relationship with the dark gods has deteriorated into something closer to curse than blessing. He holds the distinction of being the very first mortal ever elevated to demonhood, transformed in an age before humanity's rise, when the Chaos Gods first began experimenting with granting their ultimate gift. Be'lakor's ascension occurred through service to all four ruinous powers, and for a time he stood as their chosen champion, leading demon legions and mortal followers in campaigns across real space and the warp. His power exceeded that of nearly all other demon princes, and the gods themselves seemed pleased with their creation. Be'lakor's fall from grace occurred precisely because of his power and the favor he initially enjoyed. The first demon prince grew arrogant, believing himself indispensable to the dark gods and beginning to pursue his own agenda rather than serving as their obedient tool. He sought to position himself as a fifth power within the warp, a demon lord who could negotiate with the chaos gods as an equal rather than a servant. This presumption infuriated all four powers, who had created him to serve their purposes rather than develop his own ambitions. Rather than destroy Be'lakor outright, the gods chose a more fitting punishment that reflected their cruel nature. The curse laid upon Be'lakor transforms his greatest strength into perpetual torment. The Chaos Gods decreed that he would serve as the kingmaker for mortal champions, empowered to crown and guide those who would lead great campaigns in the gods' names, but forever forbidden from claiming such glory for himself. Be'lakor must watch as lesser beings receive the recognition and favor he believes should be his, forced to elevate others while knowing he can never again achieve the prominence he once enjoyed. The gods occasionally grant him freedom to pursue his own schemes, but these moments of autonomy inevitably end with his plans collapsing and his ambitions thwarted by divine intervention. The unique nature of Be'lakor's existence provides both warning and template for other undivided princes. His curse demonstrates that the Chaos Gods view even their mightiest servants as disposable tools, valuable only as long as they remain obedient. Yet his survival across countless millennia, despite divine disfavor, also proves the resilience that comes with undivided status. Be'lakor cannot be permanently destroyed because no single god claims exclusive ownership of his essence. When banished, he reforms in the warp through the combined power of all four gods, none of whom can fully unmake what they created together. This immortality through distributed patronage represents perhaps the ultimate advantage of undivided status, even when that status becomes a curse. The question of Perturabo's demonic status and specific allegiance remains ambiguous within established canon. The Primarch of the Iron Warriors Legion ascended to some form of demonhood following the Horus Heresy, but the exact nature of his transformation lacks the clarity found in cases like Angron or Magnus. Some accounts suggest Perturabo achieved elevation through service to chaos undivided, his methodical approach to warfare and siegecraft appealing to multiple gods rather than attracting the exclusive attention of any single power. The Iron Warriors themselves maintain a pragmatic relationship with chaos, using the ruinous powers as tools rather than objects of worship, and their Primarch's ascension might reflect this utilitarian approach. Other sources indicate Perturabo's transformation might be incomplete or qualitatively different from standard Demon Prince ascension. He apparently retains more of his original form and personality than most elevated champions, suggesting either exceptional resistance to full corruption or a unique bargain struck with the dark gods. The Iron Warriors continue to follow their Primarch in the 41st millennium, launching campaigns of siege warfare and calculated destruction that bear his tactical signature. But Perturabo himself rarely manifests directly. This absence fuels speculation about his true status, and whether he achieved genuine demonhood or exists in some intermediate state between mortal Primarch and full Demon Prince. The transformation into a Demon Prince fundamentally alters the nature of existence itself, granting abilities that transcend mortal limitations while simultaneously imposing constraints that even these ascended beings cannot escape. Understanding the powers available to Demon Princes requires examining both what they gain through their elevation and what vulnerabilities persist despite their newfound immortality. The dichotomy between godlike capability and exploitable weakness defines much of how Demon Princes operate within the galaxy, shaping their strategies and determining their ultimate fates. Immortality represents the most immediately apparent gift of demonhood, though the nature of this eternal existence differs significantly from mortal conceptions of living forever. A Demon Prince cannot be permanently destroyed through conventional means in real space. Weapons that would obliterate mortal champions, meltabombs that reduce targets to constituent atoms, plasma weapons that superheat matter to stellar temperatures, or even the apocalyptic firepower of orbital bombardment prove ultimately ineffective against these ascended beings. The body of a Demon Prince can be shattered, burned, torn apart, or disintegrated, yet this destruction represents only temporary banishment rather than true death. The essence of the Demon Prince, bound as it is to the warp itself, simply retreats to the Immaterium when their physical form sustains damage beyond its capacity to regenerate. The process of reformation following destruction in real space follows patterns dictated by the nature of demonic existence. When a Demon Prince suffers sufficient damage to their material form, the demonic essence that constitutes their true being tears free from reality and returns to the warp. This transition occurs instantaneously from the perspective of real space observers. The Demon Prince simply ceases to exist at the moment of their apparent death, their body dissolving into warp energy or collapsing into corrupted matter that rapidly decays. Within the Immaterium, however, the process proves far more complex and time-consuming. The Demon Prince's essence must reconstitute itself, gathering the warp energy necessary to recreate their form and restore their power to functional levels. The time required for this reformation varies enormously depending on multiple factors. The severity of the banishment plays a significant role. A Demon Prince forced back to the warp through relatively minor damage might reform within days or weeks, while one subjected to complete annihilation through overwhelming force could require years or even decades to fully reconstitute. The favor of their patron deity matters tremendously as well. A Demon Prince who currently enjoys their god's active support might find the reformation process accelerated, with warp energy flowing freely to restore them. Conversely, a prince who has recently failed their patron or fallen out of favor might discover their essence scattered across the warp, forced to slowly gather itself without divine assistance. The nature of the weapon or force that accomplished the banishment also affects reformation time. Conventional weapons, no matter how powerful, cause straightforward damage that proves relatively simple to repair once the Demon Prince returns to the warp. Sanctified weapons blessed by the Emperor or other anti-chaos powers inflict wounds that persist beyond the physical, scarring the Demon Prince's essence itself and requiring more extensive healing. Psychic attacks directed at the Demon Prince's true nature rather than their material form can cause damage that takes far longer to repair, as these assaults target the fundamental structure of their being rather than merely destroying their current physical manifestation. During the Reformation period, the Demon Prince exists in a state of vulnerability within the warp itself. Their scattered essence becomes susceptible to predation by other warp entities, rival Demon Princes, or even their own patron deity, if the god decides the prince has outlived their usefulness. The politics of the warp continue regardless of a Demon Prince's incapacitation, and enemies both mortal and demonic often attempt to ensure that a banished prince never successfully reforms. Sorcerers might perform rituals designed to trap the reforming essence, binding it in place and preventing reconstitution. Rival princes sometimes hunt their weakened counterparts through the Immaterium, seeking to devour their essence and claim their power. The chaos gods themselves occasionally intervene, either to accelerate a favored servant's return or to deliberately prolong the suffering of one who has disappointed them. The warp-granted abilities available to demon princes extend far beyond mere immortality, encompassing powers that allow them to reshape reality according to their will. Reality manipulation stands among the most terrifying capabilities these beings possess. The barrier between the material universe and the Immaterium grows thin in a demon prince's presence, allowing them to impose the physics-defying nature of the warp onto real space. This manifests in countless ways depending on the prince's patron and personal nature. A demon prince might cause weapons to malfunction simply through their proximity, twist the flow of time in localized areas to age enemies to dust in seconds, or cause solid matter to become temporarily incorporeal. The extent of these reality warping abilities varies with the prince's power level and the strength of the warp in their current location. In areas where the barrier between dimensions has worn thin, demon princes can perform feats that approach the capabilities of the chaos gods themselves, while in regions where the warp remains stable and distant, their reality manipulation becomes more limited. Demonic gifts specific to patron deities provide demon princes with abilities that reflect the nature of their divine masters. Khornate demon princes receive blessings focused on combat supremacy and destruction. Their strength increases to levels that allow them to tear apart armored vehicles. Their speed surpasses what mortal eyes can track, and their skill with weapons reaches perfection that makes them nearly unbeatable in single combat. Many receive the gift of flight through brass wings, allowing them to descend upon enemies from above. Their very presence radiates an aura of bloodlust that affects nearby mortals, driving allies into frenzied states of combat effectiveness, while causing enemies to feel overwhelming fear, or paradoxically, suicidal aggression that makes them abandon tactical sense in favor of direct confrontation. Tzeentchian demon princes gain mastery over sorcery that eclipses even the most powerful mortal psykers. They can perceive possible futures, though these visions remain clouded by the ever-shifting nature of fate that Tzeentch embodies. Their spells can transmute matter, turning adamantium armor into glass, or transforming living beings into inanimate objects. They project bolts of warp fire that burn through physical and psychic defenses alike, summon lesser demons to fight on their behalf, and weave illusions so convincing that victims cannot distinguish them from reality. The constant mutations that characterize Tzeentch's favor continue even after ascension, with these demon princes sometimes manifesting new abilities spontaneously as their forms shift and change. Nurglite demon princes embody resilience and corruption in equal measure. Their bodies become nearly impossible to permanently damage, regenerating from wounds that would destroy other beings. They can survive decapitation, dismemberment, and injuries that would instantly kill even space marines, their corrupted flesh knitting back together or simply continuing to function despite catastrophic damage. These princes radiate disease as an aura, causing crops to wither, water sources to become toxic, and living beings to sicken and die from proximity alone. They can accelerate the spread of specific plagues through conscious effort, touching victims to inflict supernatural diseases that resist all attempts at treatment. The Garden of Nurgle grants them knowledge of countless afflictions, allowing them to tailor plagues to overcome specific defenses or target particular species. Slaaneshi demon princes receive gifts related to perfection, speed, and sensory manipulation. Their movements achieve a grace and precision that makes them extraordinarily difficult to hit in combat, their bodies flowing through battle like dancers performing a deadly routine. They possess the ability to overwhelm the senses of those nearby, projecting emotions and sensations that can incapacitate enemies through pure stimulus overload. A Slaaneshi prince might cause opponents to experience such intense pleasure that they lose all will to fight, or inflict pain so exquisite that victims become paralyzed. Their weapons often carry supernatural properties that enhance the sensations they inflict, making even minor wounds feel catastrophic, while simultaneously creating addictive qualities that make victims crave further injury. The immense physical strength common to all demon princes, regardless of patron, far exceeds anything achievable by mortal beings. Even the weakest demon prince possesses strength measured in tons rather than pounds, capable of tearing through ceramite power armor with their bare hands. They can lift and throw vehicles, punch through reinforced bunker walls, and grapple with imperial knights or similarly sized war machines. This strength combines with supernatural durability that allows them to withstand punishment that would reduce mortal champions to paste. Bolter rounds that would explode inside a normal target's body might lodge in a demon prince's flesh without significantly hampering their combat effectiveness. Power weapons that cut through standard armor encounter resistance when striking demonic hide, requiring sustained assault to inflict meaningful damage. Psychic powers available to demon princes transcend the limitations that constrain mortal psychers. Where human psychers must carefully regulate their connection to the warp to avoid possession or catastrophic warp phenomena, demon princes exist as beings of the warp themselves and face no such restrictions. They can channel immense amounts of warp energy without fear of demonic possession, as they already embody that which mortal psychers fear becoming. This allows for displays of psychic might that would be suicidal for mortal practitioners. A demon prince can unleash psychic storms that cover entire battlefields, project their consciousness across star systems to communicate with followers or spy on enemies, and perform rituals that would require dozens of mortal sorcerers working in concert. Despite these formidable abilities, demon princes remain vulnerable to specific threats that can harm or even permanently destroy them. Sanctified weapons blessed by the Emperor or other forces opposed to chaos inflict damage that persists beyond the physical. When struck by such weapons, a demon prince suffers wounds that their regenerative abilities struggle to heal. The blessed nature of these armaments allows them to cut through demonic essence itself rather than merely damaging the physical form. Power weapons wielded by Space Marine chaplains, force weapons carried by librarians, and the specialized armaments of the Grey Knights all fall into this category. These weapons might not kill a demon prince outright, but they inflict genuine harm that weakens the prince and makes subsequent banishment more achievable. The Grey Knights represent perhaps the greatest threat to demon princes operating in real space. This chapter of Space Marines exists specifically to combat demonic incursions, and every aspect of their organization focuses on destroying creatures of the warp. Grey Knights receive training in anti-demon warfare from their earliest days, learning the weaknesses of different demonic entities and mastering techniques specifically designed to banish warp creatures. Their weapons carry blessings and enchantments that make them extraordinarily effective against demonic targets. Their armor provides protection against the reality warping abilities that demon princes employ. Most significantly, Grey Knights themselves possess psychic abilities that they focus into combat applications, allowing them to strike at a demon prince's essence rather than merely their physical form. When Grey Knights engage a demon prince, they employ tactics refined over millennia of demon hunting. They work in coordinated squads that support each other, using their psychic abilities in concert to weaken the prince's connection to real space. Their nemesis force weapons can sever the bonds that anchor a demon prince to the material universe, forcing banishment even when the prince's physical form remains relatively intact. The presence of multiple Grey Knights creates an area of psychic resistance that hampers a demon prince's reality manipulation, forcing them to fight more conventionally and negating many of their supernatural advantages. Demon princes recognize Grey Knights as existential threats and often choose to withdraw rather than face them directly, understanding that even victory against these specialized warriors comes at tremendous cost. Sisters of Silence, the anti-psyker warriors known as blanks or pariahs, pose a different sort of threat to demon princes. These women possess the pariah gene that makes them anathema to warp-based entities. Their presence creates zones of psychic nullification that disrupt the connection between demon princes and the warp. While Sisters of Silence lack the specialized anti-demon training of Grey Knights and do not wield sanctified weapons specifically designed to harm demonic entities, their inherent nature makes them extraordinarily dangerous to any warp-based being. A demon prince entering close proximity to Sisters of Silence experiences their powers diminishing dramatically, their reality manipulation failing, and their connection to their patron deity growing tenuous. In extreme cases, sufficient numbers of Sisters of Silence can force a demon prince's physical form to destabilize simply through their presence, causing involuntary banishment without any direct combat. The weakness imposed by true names represents a fundamental vulnerability that all demon princes share regardless of their power level or patron deity. When a being transforms into a demon prince, they acquire a true name that defines their essence within the warp. This name exists as more than mere identification. It represents the fundamental structure of the demon prince's being, the pattern that holds their essence together and defines what they are. Knowledge of a demon prince's true name grants power over them, allowing those who possess this information to perform rituals of binding, banishment, or control. A sorcerer who learns a demon prince's true name can compel them to appear when summoned, bind them to specific locations or tasks, or even inflict direct harm through rituals that target the name itself rather than the prince's physical form. Demon princes go to extraordinary lengths to protect their true names, understanding that this knowledge represents their greatest weakness. They rarely speak their own names, even to trusted followers, and they actively hunt down anyone who discovers this information. Ancient texts that might contain records of demon prince true names become targets for destruction, with princes leading campaigns specifically to eliminate such repositories of dangerous knowledge. The Inquisition maintains carefully guarded archives containing true names of known demon princes, and access to these records remains restricted to only the most senior members who have proven their resistance to corruption. The theft or compromise of such archives can have catastrophic consequences, potentially giving enemies the ability to banish or control multiple demon princes simultaneously. Binding rituals that exploit true name knowledge allow even mortal sorcerers to exercise control over demon princes under specific circumstances. These rituals require extensive preparation, precise execution, and usually the sacrifice of significant resources or lives to generate the necessary warp energy. A properly performed binding can trap a demon prince within a designated area, prevent them from using specific abilities, compel them to answer questions truthfully, or even force them to serve the ritualist for limited periods. However, such bindings remain inherently dangerous. Demon princes actively resist any attempt at control, and even successfully bound princes constantly seek weaknesses in their constraints. A binding that fails partway through typically results in the ritualist's immediate and extremely unpleasant death, as the enraged demon prince takes revenge for the attempted subjugation. The limitation of true death stands as the ultimate constraint on demon prince immortality. While these beings cannot be permanently destroyed through conventional means in real space, they remain vulnerable to absolute annihilation under specific circumstances. Destruction within the warp itself can result in true death if the damage proves sufficiently comprehensive. When a demon prince exists within the Immaterium in their essential form, rather than projecting into real space, they become vulnerable to attacks that target their fundamental nature. Other powerful warp entities, including greater demons, rival demon princes, or even the chaos gods themselves, can potentially destroy a demon prince's essence completely if they catch them in a vulnerable state within the warp. This destruction scatters the prince's essence so thoroughly that reformation becomes impossible, effectively ending their existence. The withdrawal of patron deity favor represents the other path to true death, and it remains the fate that demon princes fear most. The Chaos Gods created demon princes through an act of will, binding demonic essence to mortal souls, and sustaining the resulting hybrid existence through continuous divine power. This connection can be severed just as deliberately as it was created. When a Chaos God decides that a demon prince has outlived their usefulness, has failed too catastrophically to justify continued existence, or simply no longer amuses their patron, the god can withdraw the power that sustains the prince's demonic nature. This withdrawal causes the demon prince to unravel, their essence dissipating as the force that held it together disappears. The process proves agonizing and irreversible, with the prince experiencing their own dissolution while remaining conscious until the final moment. No force in the galaxy can prevent or reverse this fate once a chaos god has made their decision, making the capricious nature of divine favor the sword that forever hangs over every demon prince's existence. The Primarchs represented the Emperor's greatest achievement in genetic engineering, 20 demigods created to lead humanity's conquest of the galaxy during the Great Crusade. Each possessed abilities far beyond even the enhanced space marines created from their gene seed, combining superhuman physical capabilities with intellectual brilliance and an innate understanding of warfare. The scattering of the Primarchs by the Chaos Gods shortly after their creation on Terra set in motion events that would eventually lead to the Horus Heresy, the galaxy-spanning civil war that tore the Immaterium apart and damned half the Primarchs to service of the ruinous powers. The transformation of these beings into demon princes created entities that occupy a unique position within the hierarchy of chaos, combining the Emperor's craftsmanship with the raw power of the warp in ways that transcend normal demonhood. The fall of the traitor Primarchs occurred gradually throughout the Horus Heresy rather than through a single moment of corruption. Horus himself, Warmaster and most favored son of the Emperor, fell first after suffering a wound on the moon of Davin that left him vulnerable to chaos manipulation. The warrior lodges that had spread through the Luna Wolves' Legion provided the opening that chaos needed, and Horus emerged from his healing, changed fundamentally in his loyalties, if not yet in his physical form. His corruption spread to his brother Primarchs through a combination of genuine grievances against the Emperor, carefully orchestrated manipulation by the Word-Bearer's Legion under Lorgar's direction, and the particular vulnerabilities each Primarch possessed. Angron's path to demonhood began long before the heresy on the slave world of Nuceria, where he was forced to fight as a gladiator with the butcher's nails implanted in his brain. These archaeotech devices enhanced his aggression and combat abilities, but slowly destroyed his capacity for anything beyond rage and violence. The Emperor's retrieval of Angron from Nuceria, abandoning his fellow slaves to death while taking only the Primarch, created a wound that never healed. Angron's transformation into a demon prince of Khorne occurred during the Shadow Crusade in the early 31st millennium, when the World Eaters and Word-Bearers prosecuted a campaign of destruction across the Ultramar sector. The sheer scale of slaughter Angron personally inflicted, combined with the butcher's nails driving him toward ever greater violence, finally attracted Khorne's full attention. The actual ascension happened on the world of Nuceria itself, where Angron had returned with his legion. Lorgar, who had orchestrated much of the Shadow Crusade specifically to elevate his brother, performed a massive ritual that involved the sacrifice of entire cities' worth of population. The transformation tore Angron apart at the molecular level and rebuilt him as something far larger and infinitely more dangerous. Where the Primarch had stood nearly 4 meters tall, the demon prince Angron rose to almost twice that height, his body sheathed in brass-colored skin and wreathed in an aura of blood and rage. Massive wings sprouted from his back, and his already formidable strength increased to levels that allowed him to tear apart titans with his bare hands. The butcher's nails, which had been killing him slowly throughout his mortal existence, became irrelevant as his demonic nature rendered him immune to their deteriorating effects while retaining and amplifying the rage they generated. Angron's behavior as a demon prince reflects his patron deity's nature completely. He leads the World Eaters in campaigns of pure destruction, caring nothing for territory or strategic objectives beyond the opportunities they provide for slaughter. His presence on a battlefield radiates such intense fury that even his own followers sometimes lose control. Space Marines with centuries of discipline reduced to frothing berserkers by proximity to their gene father. The Dominion of Fire, a campaign Angron led in the 31st millennium shortly after his ascension, saw him carve a path of destruction through dozens of worlds before the combined efforts of multiple Space Marine chapters finally banished him back to the warp. He has manifested in real space numerous times since, each appearance heralding massacres that leave worlds depopulated and entire armies annihilated. Magnus, the Red's fall, represents perhaps the most tragic of the demon Primarch transformations, as it resulted directly from his attempt to warn the Emperor about Horus's betrayal. The Primarch of the Thousand Suns possessed psychic abilities that exceeded all his brothers, his understanding of the warp unmatched among the Primarchs. When Magnus discovered Horus's corruption, he used sorcery to project his consciousness across the galaxy to Terra, intending to warn his father immediately. The psychic force of this sending shattered the protective wards the Emperor had placed around the Imperial Palace and destroyed the webway project the Emperor had been constructing in secret. This catastrophic failure, combined with Magnus's violation of the Council of Nicaea's prohibition against sorcery, led the Emperor to dispatch Leman Russ and the Space Wolves to bring Magnus to Terra for judgment. The burning of Prospero in the early 31st millennium saw the Space Wolves assault the Thousand Suns' homeworld, with orders that had been manipulated by Horus to demand Magnus's execution rather than capture. Magnus, racked with guilt over his mistake and believing he deserved punishment, initially refused to allow his legion to defend themselves. Only when the scale of destruction became clear and his sons began dying in massive numbers did Magnus finally act, using his powers to scatter the surviving Thousand Suns into the warp. The planet of the sorcerers, a demon world within the Eye of Terror, became their new home. Magnus's actual transformation into a demon prince of Tzeentch occurred after the heresy's conclusion, when the rubric of Ahriman turned the majority of his legion into mindless automata trapped within their armor. The grief and rage this caused, combined with his already deep connection to the warp and Tzeentch's long manipulation of events, led Magnus to finally accept full demonhood. The transformation granted Magnus abilities that made him one of the most powerful psychers in the galaxy. His physical form grew to tremendous size, easily matching Angron's demonic stature, while his psychic capabilities increased exponentially. Magnus can perceive countless possible futures simultaneously, project his consciousness across vast distances, and manipulate reality on scales that rival greater demons. His appearance shifts constantly due to Tzeentch's nature, though he typically maintains a form recognizable as his former self, albeit with additional mutations including multiple limbs, eyes that see through dimensions, and skin that displays colors impossible in normal space. The planet of the sorcerers serves as his base, and from there he leads the Thousand Suns in campaigns aimed at recovering knowledge, executing Tzeentch's incomprehensible schemes, and seeking revenge against the Space Wolves for Prospero's destruction. Mortarian's journey to demonhood began with his upbringing on the toxic death world of Barbarus, where he learned to hate psychers and those who wielded supernatural power over others. The Emperor's intervention on Barbarus, claiming victory over the necromancer who had raised Mortarian, just as the Primarch prepared to face his adoptive father himself, created resentment that festered throughout the Great Crusade. Mortarian led the Death Guard Legion with grim efficiency, specializing in the grinding attrition warfare that broke enemy forces through relentless pressure rather than glorious charges. His hatred of psychers made him a natural ally for Horus during the heresy, and the Death Guard joined the rebellion believing they fought against the Emperor's hypocrisy and the increasing influence of psychers within the Imperium. The actual corruption of Mortarian and the Death Guard occurred during their journey to Terra following the drop site massacre at Istvan V. Trapped in the warp by Typhon, the Death Guard's first captain who had secretly pledged himself to Nurgle, the Legion became infected with a supernatural plague called the Destroyer Hive. This disease proved resistant to all attempts at treatment, and it spread through the fleet with horrifying speed, reducing the Death Guard to rotting, suffering wrecks who begged for death. Mortarian himself succumbed to the plague, and in his delirium and desperation, he finally called out to the warp for aid. Nurgle answered, offering to end the suffering of the Death Guard in exchange for their service. Mortarian accepted, and the transformation into Demon Prince occurred immediately, his body swelling with corruption as the plague that had been killing him became instead the source of his power. As a Demon Prince of Nurgle, Mortarian embodies the inevitability of decay and the dark comfort found in accepting entropy. His massive form stands wreathed in toxic clouds, and his presence alone causes metal to corrode, plants to wither and living beings to sicken. The scythe's silence, which he has carried since his days on Barbaros, became a demonic weapon capable of inflicting wounds that never heal and spreading plagues with every cut. Mortarion leads the Death Guard from the Plague Planet within the Eye of Terror, and his campaigns focus on spreading Nurgle's gifts across the galaxy. The Plague Wars in the 42nd millennium saw Mortarion personally lead an invasion of Ultramar, the realm of his hated brother Roboute Guilliman, transforming multiple worlds into disease-ridden wastelands before the returned Primarch of the Ultramarines finally drove him back. Fulgrim's corruption followed a different path than his brother Primarch's, beginning with his legion's discovery of a lair weapon on the world of Laren during the Great Crusade. This demon-possessed sword slowly corrupted Fulgrim, amplifying his existing perfectionist tendencies into obsessive excess. The Emperor's children under his command began pursuing sensation and perfection beyond all reasonable limits, their discipline eroding as they sought ever more extreme experiences. Fulgrim's personal fall accelerated after he murdered his brother Primarch Ferrus Manus during the Drop Site Massacre, an act that shattered something fundamental within him and opened him fully to Slaanesh's influence. The transformation into a demon prince of Slaanesh occurred gradually rather than through a single dramatic moment. Fulgrim's body changed over time as he gave himself over completely to excess, his form becoming a twisted reflection of the perfection he had always sought. Multiple arms sprouted from his torso, his lower body transformed into a serpentine tail, and his face took on an inhuman beauty that proved disturbing to behold. The demon that had possessed him through the lair blade eventually merged completely with his essence, the distinction between Fulgrim and the demon becoming meaningless as they became a single entity. As a demon prince, Fulgrim embodies Slaanesh's domain completely, pursuing perfection and sensation with an intensity that leaves entire worlds corrupted in his wake. The Emperor's children follow their gene father in campaigns that combine military conquest with the pursuit of the most extreme experiences imaginable. Lorgar Aurelian, the Primarch of the Word-Bearer's Legion, occupies a unique position among the demon Primarchs as a prince of chaos undivided rather than a servant of any single god. His journey to chaos began earlier than any other Primarch, starting during the Great Crusade when the Emperor censured him for spreading worship of the Emperor as a god rather than focusing on military conquest. The destruction of Monarchia, a perfect city Lorgar had built in the Emperor's honor, and the forced humiliation of the Word-Bearers by the Ultramarines created the conditions for Lorgar's turn to chaos. His pilgrimage to the Eye of Terror and the discovery of the Chaos Gods led him to become the architect of the Horus Heresy itself, as he systematically corrupted his brother Primarchs and prepared the groundwork for the rebellion. Lorgar's ascension to demonhood came after the heresy's conclusion, reward for his role in nearly destroying the Immaterium and spreading worship of the Chaos Gods across countless worlds. His status as a demon prince undivided reflects his role as the preacher of chaos in all its forms rather than a devotee of any single power. The transformation granted him abilities drawn from all four gods, though none at the level achieved by his brothers who serve individual patrons. Lorgar's physical form grew to match the other demon Primarchs in size, and he gained the ability to channel warp energies with devastating effect, though his true power has always lain in his words and his ability to corrupt others rather than personal combat prowess. Since his ascension, Lorgar has retreated into seclusion within the Eye of Terror, residing on Sikaris, the demon world that serves as the Word-Bearer's fortress. He spends his time in meditation and the composition of religious texts dedicated to the Chaos Gods, rarely emerging to lead his legion personally. The Word-Bearers continue to spread chaos worship throughout the galaxy under the direction of their dark apostles, but Lorgar himself remains withdrawn, his purposes and plans known only to himself and perhaps the Chaos Gods he serves. This isolation has lasted for 10,000 years, leading to speculation about his ultimate goals and whether his withdrawal represents preparation for some future action or simply the pursuits of a being whose priorities transcend mortal understanding. Perdurabo's status remains ambiguous within established imperial records and even among the forces of chaos themselves. The Primarch of the Iron Warriors Legion turned traitor during the Horus Heresy, driven by a combination of resentment over the thankless siege warfare. His legion specialized in and bitter rivalry with Rogel Dorn of the Imperial Fists. Following the heresy's failure, Perturabo led his legion into the Eye of Terror, where various sources suggest he underwent some form of transformation into demonhood. However, the exact nature of this ascension lacks the clarity found in the cases of his brother demon primarchs. Some accounts describe Perturabo as a demon prince of chaos undivided, his methodical approach to warfare and use of chaos as a tool rather than an object of worship, earning favor from all four gods without complete dedication to any. Other sources suggest Perturabo's transformation remains incomplete or fundamentally different from standard demon prince ascension. He reportedly retains more of his original form and personality than his fully corrupted brothers, possibly through sheer force of will or through bargains struck with the chaos gods that preserved his essential nature. The Iron Warriors continue to prosecute siege warfare across the galaxy, their campaigns bearing the tactical signatures that characterized Perturabo's command during the Great Crusade and Heresy. Yet Perturabo himself rarely manifests directly, leading his legion through intermediaries and maintaining his base on Medrengard, a demon world transformed into a fortress that reflects his obsession with fortification and siege warfare. Whether this represents the behavior of a true demon prince, some intermediate state of corruption, or simply the natural reclusiveness of a Primarch who always preferred iron and mathematics to glory and recognition, remains unclear. The unique status of all demon Primarchs, regardless of their specific patron or the ambiguity surrounding their transformations, stems from their hybrid nature. They combine the Emperor's genetic engineering, which created beings designed to be superior to baseline humanity in every measurable way, with the demonic essence granted by the Chaos Gods. This fusion produces entities whose power exceeds that of standard demon princes while retaining capabilities that pure demons lack. A demon Primarch maintains the strategic brilliance and tactical acumen they possessed as mortals, now enhanced by demonic perception and millennia of experience. They command the absolute loyalty of their legions in ways that other demon princes cannot replicate with their followers, the gene-seed connection between Primarch and Space Marine creating bonds that persist even through corruption and demonhood. The physical capabilities of demon Primarchs surpass those of regular demon princes significantly. Where a standard demon prince might stand 5 or 6 meters tall, the demon Primarchs tower at 8 to 10 meters, their mass and strength proportionally greater. Their resilience exceeds even the considerable durability of other princes, making them extraordinarily difficult to banish even temporarily. The psychic might available to those demon Primarchs who possess such abilities operates on scales that rival the greatest psykers in the galaxy, with Magnus in particular demonstrating power that approaches that of the Emperor himself in certain applications. Their weapons, often artifacts they carried since before their corruption, have become demonic relics of tremendous power, each capable of inflicting devastation that normal demon weapons cannot match. The galaxy has witnessed countless mortal champions ascend to demonhood across the millennia since the Chaos Gods first began granting this dark gift. While the demon Primarchs command attention through their origins and the sheer scale of their power, numerous mortal-born demon princes have carved their own legacies through acts of such magnitude that their names echo through both imperial records and the annals of chaos. These ascended champions demonstrate that the path to demonhood remains open to any being willing to pay its terrible price, regardless of their origins or initial capabilities. Their stories reveal the diverse routes to elevation and the varied forms that service to the ruinous powers can take. Doombreed stands among the most ancient and powerful demon princes in existence, his elevation occurring during Terra's prehistoric past long before the Emperor unified humanity's birth world. The exact identity of the mortal who became Doombreed remains lost to history, buried under millennia of conflicting accounts and deliberate obfuscation. Imperial scholars who have studied the fragmentary records suggest he was a conqueror of such savage brilliance that his campaigns of slaughter during ancient Terra's Age of Strife earned Khorne's direct attention. The scale of bloodshed this unknown warlord orchestrated must have been staggering even by the standards of that brutal era, when humanity tore itself apart in wars fueled by the birth pangs of Slaanesh and the collapse of human civilization into barbarism. The transformation that created Doombreed predates the Immaterium by thousands of years, making him older than any other known demon prince save possibly Bellaker. This antiquity grants him status within Khorne's hierarchy that few others can match. The Blood God himself regards Doombreed as one of his greatest champions, a distinction that places this ancient killer above even Angron in terms of pure favor. When Khorne wishes to prosecute a campaign of particular importance or respond to a challenge that demands his most capable servants, Doombreed often receives the summons. His power exceeds that of most other demon princes by a considerable margin, the result of 10,000 years of service and countless battles fought in Khorne's name across both real space and the warp. Doombreed's physical form embodies everything Khorne values in his servants. He towers even above other Khornate demon princes, his body sheathed in brass-colored skin that has turned black in places from the dried blood of countless victims. Massive wings of brass and bone allow him to descend upon battlefields from above, and his strength permits him to tear apart the heaviest armor with casual ease. The weapons he wields have drunk the blood of billions over the millennia, each one a relic of such power that it could serve as a lesser demon prince's primary armament. His presence on a battlefield radiates bloodlust so intense that even disciplined Imperial Guard regiments have broken and fled rather than face him, while his own followers fight with such frenzy that they often sustain casualties from friendly fire as they scramble to reach the enemy first. The campaign's Doombreed has led across the millennia read like a catalog of the Imperium's worst defeats. He manifested during the Age of Apostasy in the 36th millennium, leading demon armies that carved through multiple sectors before the combined efforts of several Space Marine chapters finally banished him. His return during the 13th Black Crusade saw him personally slaughter an entire company of Black Templars who had the misfortune to face him in the Cadian Gate. Imperial records document dozens of such manifestations, each one resulting in catastrophic casualties and the loss of strategic assets. The Inquisition maintains constant vigil for signs of his return, knowing that when Doombreed walks in real space, entire subsectors stand at risk of depopulation. Emkar the Reborn represents a different archetype of demon prince, one whose existence has become defined by a cycle of manifestation, banishment, and return that has spanned 10,000 years. His origins trace back to the Horus Heresy, when he served as a word-bearer's space marine who distinguished himself through exceptional devotion to chaos and skill in both sorcery and combat. The exact circumstances of his initial elevation to demonhood remain unclear, though Imperial records suggest it occurred during the latter stages of the heresy, as reward for services rendered in corrupting loyalist forces and prosecuting campaigns against the Imperium. What sets Emkar apart from countless other demon princes is not the manner of his ascension, but rather his subsequent fixation on a single target that has defined his existence for millennia. Emkar developed a particular hatred for the Ultramarines chapter that transcends the normal enmity between Chaos and the Imperium. This obsession appears to stem from defeats suffered at Ultramarines' hands during the heresy and its immediate aftermath, though the details have become obscured by time and conflicting accounts. Regardless of its origins, this hatred has driven Emkar to manifest in real space repeatedly with the specific goal of destroying the Ultramarines and humiliating their Primarch's legacy. He has led invasions of Ultramar itself on multiple occasions, corrupted successor chapters created from Ultramarines' gene seed, and orchestrated elaborate schemes designed to tarnish the reputation of Roboute Guilliman's sons. The pattern of Emkar's campaigns follows a consistent structure that Imperial commanders have learned to recognize. He manifests in real space through carefully prepared rituals, often emerging at the head of substantial demon and chaos space marine forces. His initial strikes achieve significant success through surprise and the overwhelming power he brings to bear. The Ultramarines respond with characteristic discipline and tactical flexibility, deploying forces to contain the incursion while analyzing Emkar's strategy for weaknesses. The resulting battles typically escalate into grinding conflicts, where Emkar's supernatural abilities clash against Ultramarines' tactical doctrine and the spiritual protection provided by their faith in the Emperor. Eventually, through a combination of military pressure and targeted rituals of banishment, the Ultramarines succeed in forcing Emkar back to the warp. What makes Emkar noteworthy is his consistent ability to return despite repeated banishments. Where many demon princes require decades or longer to reform after suffering defeat in real space, Emkar has demonstrated a pattern of relatively rapid reconstitution. Imperial scholars theorize this stems from his chaos undivided status, which allows him to draw on power from all four gods rather than relying solely on a single patron. Others suggest his obsessive hatred for the Ultramarines itself serves as an anchor that accelerates his reformation, the intensity of his desire for revenge pulling his scattered essence back together more quickly than would otherwise be possible. The word-bearer's dark apostles who serve him certainly contribute to his returns, performing the rituals necessary to summon him back to real space and providing the mortal forces he requires to prosecute his campaigns. Emkar's ultimate fate came during the events surrounding the 13th Black Crusade and the opening of the Great Rift. The exact circumstances of his final destruction remain classified within inquisitorial records, but available information suggests he manifested during the chaos following the Rift's creation, with the intention of exploiting the confusion to strike at Ultramar. The return of Roboute Guilliman as a living Primarch, however, fundamentally altered the strategic situation. Emkar found himself facing not just the Ultramarines chapter, but their Gene Father himself, a being whose power far exceeded anything the Demon Prince could match. The confrontation resulted in Emkar's complete destruction, his essence scattered so thoroughly that reformation became impossible. Whether Guilliman accomplished this through his own abilities, through aid from the Emperor, or through some other means remains unknown outside the highest levels of the Imperium's leadership. Khorne's Valdorius followed a path to demonhood that exemplified the Alpha Legion's approach to warfare and their complex relationship with chaos. His origins within the 20th Legion meant he inherited the culture of secrecy, misdirection, and asymmetric warfare that defined the Alpha Legion's operations. During the Horus Heresy, Valdorius distinguished himself through campaigns that combined conventional military operations with psychological warfare, infiltration, and the corruption of enemy forces from within. His elevation to Demon Prince status occurred sometime during the Scouring or the millennia immediately following, reward for services that advanced chaos interests while maintaining the operational secrecy that characterized all Alpha Legion activities. As a Demon Prince, Valdorius specialized in terror campaigns that destabilized Imperial worlds through fear rather than direct military conquest. He would manifest in a system and begin a calculated program of atrocities designed to break the population's will to resist. Strategic targets would be destroyed through sabotage rather than open assault. Planetary governors would be assassinated in ways that suggested no one was safe regardless of their security measures. Entire cities might be subjected to chemical or biological attacks that left survivors traumatized and convinced of their own vulnerability. These campaigns rarely aimed for permanent occupation of territory. Instead, Valdorius sought to create chaos and despair, weakening Imperial control and creating opportunities for other chaos forces to exploit. The hunt for Valdorius began when his terror campaigns in the periphery of Imperial space finally drew sufficient attention from the Adeptus Astartes. The White Scars chapter, whose expertise in rapid strike warfare and pursuit of fleeing enemies made them ideal hunters, received the mission to track down and eliminate this elusive Demon Prince. The campaign that followed demonstrated both Valdorius's capabilities and his ultimate limitations. He led the White Scars on a pursuit across multiple star systems, using his knowledge of Alpha Legion tactics to stay one step ahead of his hunters, while continuing to prosecute terror attacks against Imperial worlds. Each engagement saw him inflict casualties on his pursuers before withdrawing, never allowing the white scars to bring their full strength to bear in a decisive confrontation. The pursuit lasted for an extended period, with Valdorius demonstrating the patience and strategic thinking that characterized his approach to warfare. He used his mortal followers as expendable assets, sacrificing cultist forces and even Chaos Space Marines to delay his pursuers while he prepared his next move. The White Scars adapted to his tactics, deploying smaller forces capable of rapid response while maintaining larger reserves that could converge when Valdorius's location was confirmed. The chapter's Stormseers, their librarians, worked to predict Valdorius's movements through divination and analysis of his previous patterns, gradually narrowing the possible locations where he might manifest next. The final confrontation occurred when the White Scars successfully anticipated Valdorius's next target and prepared an ambush that negated his usual advantages. The battle saw the Demon Prince forced into direct combat against Space Marine forces that had studied his tactics and prepared specific countermeasures. White Scars bike squads used their mobility to prevent Valdorius from disengaging, as he had in previous encounters, while Stormseers worked to disrupt his ability to manipulate the warp and escape through demonic means. The engagement culminated in single combat between Valdorius and a White Scars hero, with the Space Marine ultimately striking the killing blow that banished the Demon Prince. Whether this banishment proved temporary or permanent remains unclear in available records, though the White Scars claimed total victory and the terror campaigns ceased following the confrontation. Engkari occupies a unique position in discussions of notable Chaos champions, because this entity is not actually a demon prince at all. Engkari exists as a keeper of secrets, a greater demon of Slaanesh, who was never mortal and therefore never underwent the transformation that creates demon princes. This distinction matters significantly when examining the hierarchies and nature of Chaos forces. Greater demons represent pure manifestations of their patron deity's nature, creatures born from the warp itself, rather than elevated from mortal origins. They typically possess power that exceeds most demon princes, as they embody their god's essence without the dilution that comes from retaining aspects of mortal identity. Engkari's prominence in imperial records stems from this greater demon's particular hatred for the Eldar species and direct involvement in events surrounding their fall. When the Eldar's descent into hedonism and excess reached its catastrophic conclusion in the 30th millennium, birthing Slaanesh through the psychic apocalypse that consumed the Eldar Empire, Engkari was among the first and most powerful keepers of secrets to manifest. This greater demon participated in the slaughter that accompanied Slaanesh's birth, hunting Eldar souls through the collapsing webway and the dying craftworlds. The enmity Engkari developed toward the Eldar during this period has persisted across the millennia, making this greater demon a recurring threat to Eldar populations throughout the galaxy. The attacks on Ulthwé Craftworld represent some of Engkari's most notable activities in the millennia following the fall. Ulthwé, positioned dangerously close to the Eye of Terror, has faced constant threats from Chaos forces throughout its existence. Engkari has manifested to assault the Craftworld on multiple occasions, leading demon armies in attempts to breach its defenses and claim the souls of its inhabitants for Slaanesh. These assaults have consistently failed due to Ulthwé's powerful psykers and the Craftworld's sophisticated defenses, but each attempt has inflicted casualties and demonstrated Engkari's persistent hatred. The greater demon views the surviving Eldar as prizes that escaped Slaanesh during the fall, souls that rightfully belong to the Dark Prince and must be claimed regardless of the cost or time required. Engkari's capabilities exceed those of typical demon princes significantly, reflecting the fundamental difference between greater demons and ascended mortals. This keeper of secrets possesses strength that allows it to tear apart vehicles and structures with ease, speed that makes it nearly impossible to target accurately, and sorcerous abilities that can overwhelm even experienced psykers. The aura of sensation and excess that Engkari radiates affects all nearby beings, inducing states of rapture or terror that incapacitate enemies and make coordinated resistance difficult. Its appearance combines inhuman beauty with disturbing features that embody Slaanesh's nature, creating a presence that simultaneously attracts and repulses those who behold it. The weapons Enkari wields carry the blessing of Slaanesh directly, each strike inflicting not just physical damage but spiritual corruption that can permanently scar victims who survive the encounter. The existence of demon princes within real space presents fundamental challenges that stem from their hybrid nature as beings simultaneously of the warp and the material universe. Unlike mortal champions who exist naturally in real space, or pure demons whose essence belongs entirely to the Immaterium, demon princes occupy an uncomfortable middle ground that creates constant tension with the physical laws governing reality. Their demonic essence seeks to return to the warp, where it originated and where it exists most naturally, while the remnants of their mortal nature provide an anchor that allows them to persist in the material realm. This conflict between their dual aspects means that maintaining a stable presence in real space requires continuous effort and specific conditions that many demon princes struggle to achieve consistently. The fundamental problem lies in the nature of the barrier separating the warp from real space. This boundary exists as a function of physical laws that define how matter and energy behave in the material universe, laws that stand in direct opposition to the chaotic nature of the Immaterium. When a demon prince manifests in real space, they impose warp stuff onto a dimension that actively resists its presence. The material universe attempts to reject them much as a body might reject a foreign substance, creating pressure that constantly pushes the demon prince back toward the warp. The strength of this rejection varies depending on multiple factors, including the stability of local reality, the presence of psychic phenomena, and the specific nature of the demon prince's connection to their patron deity. Warp rifts represent the most reliable method for demon princes to maintain extended presence in real space. These tiers in reality create zones where the barrier between dimensions has worn thin or ruptured entirely, allowing warp energy to bleed into the material universe without the usual resistance. A demon prince operating near a warp rift experiences dramatically reduced strain on their existence, as the local reality has already been compromised to the point where demonic entities can persist with relative ease. The Eye of Terror serves as the largest and most stable such rift, a region of space where the warp and real space have merged so completely that the distinction becomes meaningless in many areas. Demon princes who remain within the Eye or similar zones of warp-real space overlap can exist indefinitely without the need for additional anchoring mechanisms. The opening of the Great Rift following the 13th Black Crusade fundamentally altered the strategic situation for demon princes across the galaxy. This massive wound in reality stretches from the Eye of Terror to the galactic east, creating a permanent corridor where the barrier between dimensions has collapsed. Demon princes can now traverse vast distances through the rift itself, emerging at various points along its length to prosecute campaigns that would have been impossible before its creation. The regions adjacent to the rift have become significantly easier for demon princes to operate within, as the proximity to such a massive warp phenomenon weakens local reality enough that maintaining manifestation requires less effort. Imperial worlds near the rift face constant threat from demon prince-led invasions that can strike with little warning and sustain themselves for extended periods. Demonic incursions provide another mechanism for demon princes to anchor themselves in real space, though this method proves less reliable than operating near permanent warp rifts. When large numbers of demons manifest in a particular location, their collective presence creates a localized weakening of the barrier between dimensions. The warp energy required to sustain hundreds or thousands of lesser demons generates a field effect that makes it easier for more powerful entities to maintain their existence in real space. A demon prince leading such an incursion benefits from this effect, using the presence of their demon army as a buffer that reduces the strain of manifesting. This explains why demon princes rarely appear alone when prosecuting major campaigns. They require the supporting presence of demon legions, not just for military purposes, but as a metaphysical anchor that helps sustain their material form. The relationship between demon princes and their demon armies creates interesting tactical considerations. a demon prince must balance the military effectiveness of their forces against the metaphysical support those forces provide. Committing demon troops to assaults that result in their banishment weakens the overall anchoring effect, potentially forcing the demon prince to withdraw even if the military situation remains favorable. Conversely, holding demon forces in reserve to maintain maximum anchoring strength limits the demon prince's ability to prosecute aggressive operations. Skilled demon princes learn to manage this balance, rotating demon units through combat to maintain steady pressure on enemies, while preserving enough demonic presence to sustain their own manifestation. Less experienced princes sometimes find themselves forced back to the warp knot through direct defeat, but because they expended their demon forces too recklessly and lost the metaphysical foundation keeping them in real space. Sustained rituals performed by mortal followers offer a third method for demon princes to maintain presence in the material realm. Chaos cults, corrupted planetary populations, and dedicated chaos space marine sorcerers can perform ceremonies that channel warp energy in ways that stabilize a demon prince's manifestation. These rituals typically require substantial resources, including sacrificial victims, psychically active participants, and locations where the barrier between dimensions has been weakened through previous corruption. A well-executed ritual can anchor a demon prince in real space for extended periods, allowing them to operate far from natural warp rifts and without the need for large demon armies. The demon prince becomes bound to the ritual site, however, creating a vulnerability that enemies can exploit if they identify the location and disrupt the ceremony. The strategic importance of demon princes within the long war against the Immaterium cannot be overstated. These beings serve as the primary commanders and organizers of sustained chaos campaigns, providing the leadership necessary to coordinate forces that would otherwise dissolve into anarchic violence. Chaos Space Marine warbands require leaders capable of commanding respect through both power and accomplishment, and demon princes fulfill this role perfectly. Their immortality means they can prosecute campaigns across centuries, maintaining strategic focus that mortal commanders cannot match. Their supernatural abilities allow them to respond to threats and opportunities in ways that purely mortal leaders cannot, while their direct connection to the Chaos Gods provides them with authority that other champions must constantly prove and reprove through action. Demon princes command Chaos Space Marine warbands through a combination of raw power, proven success, and the implicit backing of their patron deity. A Chaos Space Marine who has survived for millennia in the service of the Dark Gods understands that a demon prince represents the ultimate achievement they themselves aspire to reach. This creates a dynamic where the demon prince serves simultaneously as commander, inspiration, and reminder of what awaits those who serve faithfully. The Warband's Chaos Space Marines follow their demon prince leader not out of loyalty in any conventional sense, but from recognition that the prince has achieved what they desire and might help them reach similar heights. This relationship remains inherently unstable, as ambitious champions within the warband constantly seek opportunities to distinguish themselves, potentially at their leader's expense. A demon prince must therefore balance granting enough autonomy to keep their followers engaged while maintaining sufficient control to prevent outright rebellion. The leadership style employed by demon princes varies dramatically based on their patron deity and personal history. Khorne demon princes lead from the front, their presence on the battlefield serving as the focal point for their warband's assaults. They identify the strongest enemy positions and hurl themselves into combat, trusting that their followers will surge forward in their wake. This approach results in high casualties among the warband, but generates the constant bloodshed that Khorne demands and keeps the most aggressive champions satisfied through regular opportunities for personal glory. Tzeentchian demon princes employ far more complex command structures, often manipulating their warbands through layers of misdirection and competing objectives that serve purposes known only to the prince themselves. Nurglite princes maintain a more egalitarian relationship with their followers, the shared acceptance of decay creating bonds that approach genuine camaraderie, despite the fundamental selfishness underlying all chaos allegiances. Slaaneshi demon princes inspire through their pursuit of perfection, driving their warbands to ever greater extremes in search of the transcendent experiences their leader embodies. Black Crusades represent the largest and most significant military operations that chaos forces prosecute against the Immaterium, and demon princes frequently serve as architects and commanders of these massive campaigns. The term Black Crusade technically refers to any major offensive launched from the Eye of Terror against Imperial space, though the most famous examples remain the 13 Black Crusades led by Abaddon the Despoiler. Demon princes participate in these crusades as independent commanders leading their own forces, or as subordinate leaders within larger command structures. Their ability to coordinate demon armies alongside mortal cultists and chaos space marines makes them invaluable for operations that require sustained pressure across multiple star systems. A Black Crusade might involve dozens of demon princes, each prosecuting their own campaigns in support of the overall strategic objective, their combined efforts creating pressure that the Immaterium struggles to counter effectively. The role of demon princes as architects of corruption extends beyond simple military command into the systematic undermining of imperial institutions and populations. These beings understand that military conquest alone rarely produces lasting results in a galaxy where the Immaterium can draw upon effectively unlimited reserves of manpower. True victory requires transforming conquered territories into assets that actively support chaos rather than simply removing them from imperial control. Demon princes orchestrate corruption campaigns that span decades, carefully introducing chaos influence into planetary societies through cults, manipulation of existing power structures, and the gradual erosion of faith in the Emperor. A world that falls to chaos through internal corruption becomes far more valuable than one conquered through military force, as its population actively embraces the ruinous powers rather than requiring constant suppression. Demon worlds represent the ultimate expression of chaos control over real space, planets so thoroughly corrupted that they have become extensions of the warp itself. These worlds exist in a state where physical laws have broken down completely, replaced by the nightmare logic of the Immaterium. Geography shifts according to the whims of whatever chaos power dominates the world. Cities might exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and the native populations have transformed into things that can barely be recognized as having once been human or whatever species originally inhabited the planet. Demon princes rule many of these worlds as god kings, their power over their domains approaching absolute within the boundaries of their territory. The planet of the sorcerers serves Magnus the Red as both fortress and laboratory, while the Plague Planet provides Mortarion with a base from which to coordinate Death Guard operations across the galaxy. The transformation of a conquered planet into a demon world requires sustained effort and specific conditions that not every demon prince can achieve. The process begins with the systematic corruption of the planet's population and the weakening of the barrier between real space and the warp through ritual, mass sacrifice, and the concentration of psychic phenomena. As corruption spreads, reality itself begins to break down, with localized warp phenomena appearing with increasing frequency. The demon prince overseeing this transformation must maintain constant presence and active direction of the corruption, shaping how the world changes to reflect their patron deity's nature and their own preferences. Eventually, if the corruption reaches sufficient depth, the planet transitions fully into demon world status, becoming a permanent fixture within the warp or existing in a liminal state between dimensions. Life on demon worlds defies conventional description because these places operate according to rules that contradict everything that defines normal existence. Time flows inconsistently, with different regions of the same planet experiencing hours, days, or years at different rates. Physical distance becomes meaningless as locations shift their positions relative to each other based on symbolic or emotional connections rather than spatial relationships. The populations of these worlds have been transformed so thoroughly by exposure to warp energy that calling them human or alien becomes technically inaccurate. they exist as something fundamentally different, creatures of the warp wearing the rough shape of their original species. These transformed inhabitants worship their demon prince ruler with fanatical devotion that stems from genuine awe at the god, like being who dominates their existence rather than mere fear or indoctrination. Demon princes who rule demon worlds exercise power that approaches that of the chaos gods themselves within their limited domains. They can reshape reality through will alone, creating structures, altering landscapes, and manifesting resources as needed. The populations of their worlds exist at their sufferance, and a demon prince might casually obliterate entire cities or transform their inhabitants into new forms on a whim. This absolute power serves multiple purposes beyond simple gratification. A demon world functions as a fortress that enemies cannot easily assault, as attackers must contend with reality itself being hostile to their presence. It provides a base where the demon prince can exist without the constant strain of maintaining manifestation in normal real space. And it serves as a demonstration of the prince's power and favor with their patron deity, a monument to their achievements that other chaos champions can observe and envy. The interaction between demon princes and their mortal followers creates relationships defined by a combination of worship, ambition, and pragmatic cooperation. Mortal cultists view demon princes as living proof that the chaos gods reward faithful service, beings who have achieved the ultimate transformation that cultists themselves might hope to reach through sufficient devotion. This creates a dynamic where cultists serve their demon prince master with genuine religious fervor, seeing obedience as both worship of their patron deity and investment in their own potential ascension. The demon prince, in turn, requires mortal followers to perform tasks that they cannot accomplish directly, including the maintenance of ritual sites, the corruption of new populations, and the provision of sacrifices necessary to sustain demonic manifestations. Chaos Space Marines who serve under demon princes maintain a more complex relationship with their ascended leaders. These warriors possess enough experience and capability to potentially achieve demonhood themselves, making them simultaneously valuable subordinates and potential rivals. A demon prince commanding Chaos Space Marines must constantly balance providing enough opportunity for their followers to distinguish themselves against the risk that a particularly successful champion might challenge their authority or attract enough divine favor to become a competitor. The demon prince uses their superior power to maintain discipline when necessary, their ability to destroy even veteran Chaos Space Marines, ensuring that open rebellion remains rare. Yet they must also demonstrate the leadership and strategic acumen that justifies their position, as Chaos Space Marines respect strength and success above all other qualities. The corrupted masses who serve demon princes on conquered or corrupted worlds exist in a state of degradation that makes them barely recognizable as the species they once belonged to. Years or decades of exposure to chaos corruption, combined with the deliberate efforts of their demon prince rulers to reshape them into more useful forms, produces populations that serve as both workforce and resource. These corrupted masses build the fortifications and structures their masters require, fight as expendable troops when military force becomes necessary, and provide the psychic energy that sustains demonic manifestations through their worship and suffering. A demon prince views these populations with the same regard a mortal commander might view ammunition or fuel, necessary resources, to be expended as circumstances require, with no consideration for their individual lives or well-being. The strategic deployment of mortal followers allows demon princes to extend their influence far beyond their personal presence. Cults established on imperial worlds serve as forward bases for future operations, their members gradually corrupting their societies from within while awaiting the day when their master manifests to lead them in open rebellion. Chaos Space Marine warbands prosecute campaigns across multiple systems simultaneously, each force advancing the demon prince's overall strategy while seeking glory for themselves. The corrupted populations of demon worlds provide endless reserves of cultist troops who can be transported to battlefields across the galaxy, their lives spent freely to achieve objectives that advance their masters standing with the chaos gods. This network of mortal assets makes individual demon princes far more dangerous than their personal power alone would suggest, as they can bring force to bear across vast distances and maintain pressure on multiple fronts that the Imperium struggles to counter effectively. The hierarchy within the forces of chaos operates according to principles that defy mortal understanding of military organization or political structure. At the apex stand the chaos gods themselves, beings of such power and alien consciousness that their motivations remain incomprehensible to lesser entities. Below them exist two distinct categories of servants who occupy positions of tremendous authority, yet approach their service to the ruinous powers from fundamentally different origins. Greater demons represent pure manifestations of their patron deity's nature, creatures born directly from the warp without ever having experienced mortal existence. Demon princes, by contrast, achieve their current state through ascension from mortality, retaining aspects of their former nature even as they transformed into beings of the Immaterium. This fundamental difference in origin creates complex dynamics between these two types of entities, relationships characterized by competition, resentment, occasional cooperation, and constant jockeying for position within their shared patron's favor. Greater demons exist as direct extensions of their chaos god's will and nature. A bloodthirster embodies Khorne's rage and martial prowess without dilution or compromise. A Lord of Change manifests Tzeentch's cunning and mastery of fate as pure concept given form. A Great Unclean One represents Nurgle's cycle of decay and rebirth stripped of any perspective beyond acceptance of entropy. A Keeper of Secrets personifies Slaanesh's pursuit of excess and perfection as absolute principle. These beings emerged from the warp itself when the Chaos Gods achieved sufficient consciousness to create servants, shaped from the same essential energy that comprises their divine patrons. They have never known mortality, never experienced the limitations of physical existence, and cannot comprehend the universe from any perspective except that of their creating deity. This purity of purpose grants them tremendous power and absolute clarity regarding their function within the cosmic order. The creation process for greater demons differs entirely from the transformation that produces demon princes. When a chaos god wishes to create a greater demon, they simply will it into existence, shaping warp energy according to their nature until a new consciousness emerges. This new being possesses immediate awareness of its purpose and capabilities, requiring no period of learning or adjustment. A newly created bloodthirster understands combat at an instinctive level that exceeds anything achievable through training. A freshly manifested Lord of Change grasps the intricacies of manipulation and scheming as innate knowledge rather than learned skill. The greater demon exists from its first moment as a perfected expression of its patron's domain, lacking the growth trajectory that characterizes mortal existence, but also missing the individual perspective that comes from having lived as something other than a demon. Demon princes bring entirely different qualities to their service of the Chaos Gods, qualities that stem directly from their mortal origins. These beings remember what it meant to be human, Eldar, or whatever species they belonged to before ascension. They understand mortal psychology because they once possessed it themselves. They comprehend the material universe through experience rather than abstract knowledge. Most significantly, they retain individual identity and personal ambition that exists somewhat independently of their patron deity's nature. A demon prince of Khorne still experiences rage and bloodlust as their primary drives, but they might apply these impulses with strategic thinking developed during their mortal military career. A demon prince of Tzeentch schemes according to their god's nature, yet they bring personal creativity and individual perspective to their manipulations that pure demons lack. This retention of mortal characteristics creates the first major source of tension between demon princes and greater demons. From the perspective of a greater demon, a demon prince represents a compromised and inferior servant of their shared patron. The greater demon sees itself as pure expression of divine will, while the demon prince remains tainted by memories of mortality and the individual ego that characterized their former existence. A bloodthirster views demon princes of Khorne as warriors who still think too much, who apply strategy and planning to situations where pure aggression would serve the blood god better. A Lord of Change regards demon princes of Tzeentch as sorcerers who lack the perfect understanding of fate and change that comes from being born as manifestation of these concepts. The greater demon's contempt for the demon prince's hybrid nature manifests as condescension at best and active hostility at worst. Demon princes, for their part, often view greater demons as limited and inflexible despite their power. The perspective gained from mortal experience allows demon princes to recognize situations where pure expression of their patron's nature proves counterproductive or insufficient. A demon prince of Khorne understands that even the blood god benefits when his champions apply tactical thinking to ensure maximum bloodshed rather than simply charging forward mindlessly. A demon prince of Tzeentch recognizes that the most effective schemes sometimes require straightforward action rather than baroque complexity. This flexibility, born from having experienced existence outside their patron's domain, gives demon princes capabilities that greater demons cannot replicate. Yet greater demons interpret this flexibility as weakness, viewing it as evidence that demon princes lack the purity of dedication that true service demands. The competition for patron deity favor represents the most significant source of conflict between greater demons and demon princes. Both types of entity require their gods' continued support to maintain their positions within the hierarchy of chaos. Greater demons depend on their patron's power to sustain their existence and fuel their capabilities. Demon princes need divine favor even more desperately, as the withdrawal of their god's blessing would result in their complete dissolution. This creates a zero-sum dynamic where any increase in one entity's standing potentially comes at another's expense. When a chaos god grants significant favor to a demon prince, elevating them to command important campaigns or bestowing powerful gifts, greater demons who served that god for eons perceive this as unjust favoritism toward an upstart mortal who achieved demonhood recently by their standards. The jealousy greater demons harbor toward demon princes stems partly from the nature of ascension itself. Greater demons exist because their patron god created them, a process that required no particular achievement or proof of worthiness on the demon's part. They simply came into being as servants and have remained such ever since. Demon princes, however, earned their elevation through extraordinary acts that caught their god's attention. The very existence of a demon prince proves they accomplished something remarkable enough to warrant transformation into an immortal being. This creates a paradox where greater demons simultaneously look down on demon princes as inferior hybrid creatures, while resenting the fact that these former mortals achieved recognition through merit rather than simply being created to serve. Khornate greater demons and demon princes experience particularly intense rivalry due to their patron's nature. Khorne values martial prowess and personal combat achievement above all other qualities, creating a hierarchy based explicitly on who can kill most effectively. Bloodthirsters pride themselves on being the ultimate warriors, beings created specifically to embody perfect combat capability. When a mortal ascends to become a demon prince of Khorne, they implicitly challenge this supremacy by proving themselves worthy of elevation through their own battlefield accomplishments. The bloodthirster views this as a mortal claiming to match or exceed capabilities that should belong exclusively to greater demons. This resentment manifests in direct challenges, with bloodthirsters sometimes attacking demon princes of Khorne to prove their superiority through combat. These confrontations serve Khorne's purposes regardless of outcome, as they generate the bloodshed and violence he craves, but they create operational problems when greater demons and demon princes, who should be cooperating, instead fight each other. The political maneuvering between Tzeentchian greater demons and demon princes operates through more subtle channels than the direct violence characterizing Khornate rivalries. Lords of Change engage in elaborate schemes designed to undermine demon princes who threaten their positions within Tzeentch's hierarchy. These schemes might involve manipulating events so that a demon prince's carefully laid plans fail at crucial moments, making them appear incompetent to their patron. A Lord of Change might feed false information to a demon prince, leading them to pursue objectives that actually serve the greater demon's purposes rather than their own. The demon might even arrange for the demon prince to achieve apparent success that actually positions them for catastrophic failure down the line, the kind of multi-layered manipulation that Tzeentch particularly appreciates. Demon princes of Tzeentch respond with their own counter-schemes, using their retained mortal cunning to outmaneuver greater demons who underestimate them. Nurgle-like greater demons and demon princes maintain relationships that appear more collegial on the surface, reflecting their patrons' emphasis on acceptance and the brotherhood found in shared decay. Great Unclean Ones often treat demon princes of Nurgle with avuncular affection, calling them favored children and expressing pride in their accomplishments. Yet beneath this superficial warmth lies the same fundamental competition for divine favor that characterizes all such relationships. A Great Unclean One might encourage a demon prince to pursue particularly ambitious plague campaigns, while secretly hoping they overextend themselves and suffer setbacks that diminish their standing. The demon presents this encouragement as supportive mentorship, making it difficult for the demon prince to recognize the manipulation. Conversely, demon princes of Nurgle sometimes exploit their greater demon counterparts' tendency toward complacency, using their mortal-derived initiative to seize opportunities that the demons overlook. Slaaneshi politics between greater demons and demon princes revolve around demonstrations of superiority in pursuing excess and perfection. Keepers of secrets challenge demon princes to competitions in sensation-seeking, artistic achievement, or the orchestration of experiences that transcend normal limits. These challenges serve as tests of worthiness, with the Keeper of Secrets expecting to demonstrate that their pure demonic nature allows them to achieve heights of excess that former mortals cannot match. Demon princes of Slaanesh accept these challenges because refusing would suggest weakness or limited dedication to their patrons' ideals. The competitions themselves often produce results that please Slaanesh regardless of who wins, as both participants push themselves to extremes that generate the intense experiences their god craves. Yet the underlying rivalry remains real, with each entity seeking to prove their superiority and claim greater share of divine favor. Despite these tensions, greater demons and demon princes do cooperate when circumstances demand joint action, or when their patron deity explicitly commands coordination. Major campaigns against the Immaterium often require combining the strengths of both types of entity to achieve objectives that neither could accomplish alone. A greater demon brings raw power and the ability to lead demon legions with perfect unity of purpose, while a demon prince contributes strategic thinking and understanding of how mortal defenders will respond to demonic assault. The greater demon's pure expression of their patron's nature provides spiritual authority that inspires cultist followers and lesser demons, while the demon prince's retained mortal perspective allows them to identify weaknesses in enemy defenses that pure demons might overlook. The Siege of Vrax in the 41st millennium demonstrated both the potential and the problems inherent in greater demon and demon prince cooperation. This 17-year campaign to conquer a heavily fortified imperial world saw multiple demon princes of different patrons working alongside greater demons and vast armies of cultists and chaos space marines. The extended timeline allowed for complex interactions between the various demonic commanders, with periods of effective cooperation alternating with episodes of rivalry and conflict. Greater demons and demon princes coordinated massive assaults that breached imperial defenses, combining their different capabilities to overcome obstacles that would have stopped either type of entity operating alone. Yet the same campaign also featured incidents where greater demons deliberately withheld support from demon prince-led operations, hoping to see their rivals fail and lose standing with their patrons. The differences in capability between greater demons and demon princes create situations where each type of entity proves superior in specific contexts. Greater demons possess advantages in pure combat power, with even relatively weak greater demons typically exceeding the physical capabilities of all but the most powerful demon princes. A bloodthirster can tear apart super heavy tanks and match titans in direct combat, displaying strength that most demon princes cannot replicate. Lords of Change wield sorceress abilities that dwarf what mortal Bornpsychers achieved even after ascending to demonhood. The greater demon's pure connection to their patron deity allows them to channel divine power more efficiently than hybrid beings who retain aspects of mortality. Demon princes counter these advantages through flexibility and strategic capability that greater demons lack. A demon prince can adapt their approach based on changing circumstances, drawing on experience gained during their mortal career to identify solutions that pure demons would never consider. They understand logistics, morale, and the psychological factors that influence mortal behavior because they once experienced these things themselves. A demon prince leading a campaign against an imperial fortress world knows how human defenders think, what will break their morale, and which targets matter most to the enemy command structure. A greater demon approaches the same situation with perfect clarity about how to kill efficiently, but less understanding of why mortals behave as they do or how to exploit their psychological weaknesses. The command of mortal forces represents an area where demon princes consistently outperform greater demons. Cultists, traitor guard regiments, and even Chaos Space Marines respond better to leaders who understand mortal concerns and can communicate in ways that resonate with beings who have not transcended their original nature. A demon prince can inspire followers through speeches that acknowledge their fears and ambitions while channeling these emotions toward productive service. Greater demons communicate primarily through raw intimidation and the spiritual pressure of their presence, methods that prove effective for short-term compliance but fail to generate the sustained loyalty required for extended campaigns. Mortal followers serving under demon princes often display greater initiative and tactical flexibility than those commanded by greater demons, as they respond to leadership that makes sense from their perspective rather than simply obeying out of terror. The phenomenon of greater demons serving under demon prince commanders occurs rarely, but demonstrates the complex nature of demonic hierarchy. When a demon prince achieves sufficient favor with their patron deity and demonstrates capabilities that justify elevation to supreme command, they might find themselves leading forces that include greater demons among their subordinates. This situation creates tremendous tension, as the greater demon resents taking orders from what it views as an inferior being. The demon prince must exercise their authority carefully, framing commands in ways that acknowledge the greater demon's power, while making clear that defying orders means defying their shared patron's will. Some demon princes handle this by granting greater demons substantial autonomy, directing them toward objectives that suit their nature and allowing them freedom in execution. Others maintain tighter control, using their patron deity's explicit backing to compel obedience regardless of the greater demon's preferences. The reverse situation, where demon princes serve under greater demon commanders, proves equally fraught with difficulty. A demon prince possesses individual ambition and personal goals that extend beyond simple obedience to their patron deity. When forced to accept a greater demon's authority, the demon prince constantly seeks opportunities to distinguish themselves and potentially supplant their commander. The greater demon must remain vigilant against subordinate demon princes who might sabotage operations to make their superior appear incompetent, or who might attempt to claim credit for successes that should enhance the greater demon's standing. This dynamic creates command structures where supposed allies spend as much effort monitoring each other as fighting their actual enemies. The long-term implications of greater demon and demon prince rivalry extend beyond individual campaigns to shape the overall effectiveness of chaos forces. The Imperium benefits tremendously from the fact that demonic armies rarely achieve the unity of purpose that characterizes loyalist Space Marine operations or well-coordinated Imperial Guard campaigns. Greater demons and demon princes who should be working together instead compete for glory and divine favor, creating opportunities for Imperial forces to exploit divisions within Chaos ranks. Clever Imperial commanders identify these rivalries and manipulate them, feeding intelligence that plays different demonic factions against each other or timing counterattacks to strike when greater demons and demon princes are distracted by their internal conflicts. Yet this same rivalry also drives both greater demons and demon princes to achieve feats they might not attempt if they faced no competition. The desire to outperform their counterparts pushes these entities to take risks and pursue ambitious objectives that advance chaos interests, even when the motivation stems from personal rivalry rather than strategic necessity. A demon prince might orchestrate an elaborate corruption campaign specifically to prove they can accomplish what a greater demon failed to achieve, and the resulting success benefits their patron regardless of the underlying motivation. A greater demon might lead a suicidal assault against impossible odds to demonstrate courage that a rival demon prince lacks, and the damage inflicted serves chaos purposes even if the demon's personal goal was simply outdoing their competitor. The chaos gods themselves view the rivalry between greater demons and demon princes with amusement and calculated interest. These divine beings understand that competition among their servants generates better results than cooperation would produce. The constant jockeying for position ensures that both greater demons and demon princes remain focused on proving their worth through action rather than growing complacent in their positions. The jealousy and resentment that characterize these relationships create emotional energy that feeds the chaos gods, particularly Tzeentch, who thrives on scheming, and Slaanesh, who draws power from obsessive rivalry. When the competition occasionally erupts into open violence, as it does most frequently among Khornate servants, the resulting bloodshed serves their patron's purposes perfectly. The Imperium's response to demon prince manifestations operates through multiple specialized organizations, each bringing unique capabilities to the eternal struggle against these ascended champions of chaos. The Grey Knights chapter stands as the most elite and secretive force dedicated specifically to combating demonic threats. Created during the aftermath of the Horus Heresy under the direction of Malcador the Sigillite, the Grey Knights exist as the chamber militant of the Ordo Malleus, the branch of the Inquisition tasked with hunting demons. Every Grey Knight possesses psychic abilities and undergoes training that focuses exclusively on identifying, confronting, and banishing entities of the warp. Their fortress monastery on Titan, Saturn's largest moon, serves as both training ground and repository of knowledge accumulated across 10,000 years of demon hunting. The Grey Knights approach demon prince threats with methodical precision born from extensive experience. When intelligence indicates a demon prince has manifested in real space, the chapter deploys strike forces sized according to the threat assessment. A newly ascended demon prince of relatively limited power might warrant a single squad of Grey Knights, while ancient princes like Doombreed or the demon primarchs require multiple brotherhoods working in coordination. The Grey Knights study their target extensively before engagement, consulting their archives for information about the specific demon prince's history, capabilities, and known weaknesses. This preparation phase proves critical, as understanding which chaos god the prince serves allows the Grey Knights to anticipate their tactics and prepare appropriate countermeasures. The specialized equipment carried by Grey Knights makes them uniquely effective against demon princes. Their nemesis force weapons channel psychic energy through blessed metals, allowing them to cut through demonic essence rather than merely damaging physical forms. Each strike from these weapons inflicts wounds that persist beyond the material, scarring the demon prince's fundamental nature and making subsequent banishment easier to achieve. The Grey Knight's Aegis armor incorporates wards and hexagrammic symbols that provide protection against the reality warping abilities demon princes employ. Psychic hoods amplify their mental defenses, allowing them to resist the overwhelming spiritual pressure that radiates from these ascended beings. Storm bolters loaded with psycannon ammunition fire rounds blessed by the chapter's tech marines and sanctified through ritual, each bolt carrying the Emperor's light as a weapon against the creatures of the warp. Grey Knights engage demon princes through coordinated squad tactics that maximize their psychic abilities while minimizing exposure to the prince's overwhelming power. They establish overlapping fields of psychic nullification that weaken the demon prince's connection to the warp, forcing the entity to rely more on physical capabilities rather than reality manipulation. Multiple Grey Knights focus their psychic might in concert, their combined mental assault targeting the bonds that anchor the demon prince to real space. This coordinated psychic pressure creates stress points in the prince's manifestation, weakening their hold on material existence and making them vulnerable to banishment. The squad maintains constant movement, preventing the demon prince from focusing their full attention on any single target, while ensuring that fallen brothers can be immediately replaced in the psychic net. The Ordo Malleus provides the institutional framework and broader strategic coordination necessary to combat demon prince threats across the galaxy. Inquisitors of this order spend their careers studying demonic incursions, tracking patterns in chaos activity, and maintaining networks of informants who report signs of warp corruption. When evidence suggests a demon prince has manifested or plans to do so, the Ordo Malleus coordinates the Imperial response, determining what forces are required and ensuring they deploy to the threatened location. Inquisitors bring resources beyond what the Grey Knights alone can provide, including access to Imperial Guard regiments, Navy assets for orbital bombardment, and specialists in various forms of demon hunting. Their authority allows them to commandeer whatever Imperial resources prove necessary, overriding local command structures when the demonic threat demands immediate action. The Ordo Malleus maintains extensive archives containing information about known demon princes, including their true names when such knowledge has been acquired. These repositories represent some of the most heavily guarded locations in the Imperium, as the information they contain could prove catastrophic if it fell into enemy hands. Access remains restricted to senior inquisitors who have proven their resistance to corruption through decades of service. The archives document every confirmed demon prince manifestation, recording details about their appearance, capabilities, tactical preferences, and the circumstances surrounding their banishment. This accumulated knowledge allows the Ordo Malleus to identify patterns and develop strategies specific to individual demon princes, giving Imperial forces advantages they would otherwise lack when facing these immortal enemies. The Adeptus, the military arm of the ecclesiarchy commonly known as the Sisters of Battle, contribute to anti-demon prince operations through their absolute faith in the Emperor and their specialized training in purging corruption. While they lack the psychic abilities of Grey Knights and the institutional resources of the Inquisition, the Sisters of Battle bring fanatical dedication and weapons blessed by the ecclesiarchy's most senior priests. Their acts of faith manifest as miracles that defy rational explanation, allowing them to survive wounds that should prove fatal or strike with accuracy that exceeds human capability. These miracles stem from their unshakable belief in the Emperor's divinity, and they prove particularly effective against demonic entities whose existence contradicts the Imperial truth. Sisters of Battle engage demon princes as part of larger Imperial forces rather than through the specialized strike operations that characterize Grey Knights' deployments. A typical engagement sees the sororitas forming the core of defensive positions or leading assaults against cultist forces supporting the demon prince's manifestation. Their flamers and meltaguns prove effective at destroying the corrupted mortal followers who perform rituals anchoring the prince to real space, while their bolters deliver blessed ammunition that can harm demonic flesh. The presence of seraphim squads provides mobility that allows the sisters to respond rapidly to demon prince movements, though direct confrontation with these ascended beings typically requires support from Grey Knights or other specialized forces. The tactics employed against demon princes vary depending on the specific threat, but share common elements refined through millennia of experience. Sanctified weaponry forms the foundation of any successful engagement, as conventional arms prove largely ineffective against beings whose essence belongs to the warp. Weapons blessed by the ecclesiarchy, consecrated by Grey Knights techmarines, or anointed with sacred oils by inquisitorial priests carry the Emperor's light as a tangible force that burns demonic essence. Power weapons wielded by Space Marine chaplains, force weapons carried by librarians, and the specialized armaments unique to the Grey Knights all function through similar principles, channeling spiritual energy through physical forms to strike at targets that exist partially outside normal reality. Psychic nullification represents the second critical element in combating demon princes. These beings maintain their presence in real space through continuous connection to the warp, drawing power from the Immaterium to sustain their material forms and fuel their reality warping abilities. Disrupting this connection weakens them dramatically, forcing them to rely on diminished capabilities while making banishment far easier to achieve. Grey Knights accomplish this through coordinated psychic assault, their combined mental might creating zones where the barrier between dimensions strengthens and warp energy struggles to penetrate. Sisters of Silence, when available for deployment, provide even more effective nullification through their inherent nature as blanks. Their presence creates areas of psychic dead space where demon princes find their powers failing and their connection to their patron deity growing tenuous. The exploitation of true names offers the most direct path to banishing or even permanently destroying demon princes, though acquiring this knowledge and using it effectively presents enormous challenges. When the Ordo Malleus possesses a demon prince's true name, Inquisitors can perform rituals of binding that compel the prince to appear at designated locations or prevent them from manifesting in specific regions of space. More aggressive applications involve rituals of banishment that target the prince's essence directly, using their true name as a focus that allows the ritualist to strike at their fundamental nature, regardless of physical distance. The most powerful rituals can theoretically achieve true death by completely unraveling the demon prince's essence, though such workings require tremendous resources and carry significant risks of catastrophic failure. The practical application of true name exploitation during active combat proves extremely difficult. Rituals require time, preparation, and participants who can maintain concentration despite the chaos of battle. Demon princes actively interfere with any attempt to use their true name against them, directing their full attention toward killing ritualists before the working can be completed. The Inquisition has developed abbreviated rituals designed for battlefield use, compressed versions of longer ceremonies that sacrifice some effectiveness for speed of execution. These abbreviated workings typically aim for temporary binding or weakening rather than permanent destruction, creating opportunities for conventional forces to inflict the damage necessary for banishment. Overwhelming firepower represents the final element in successful anti-demon prince operations, compensating through sheer volume of force for what individual weapons lack in effectiveness. While sanctified weapons and psychic attacks target the demon prince's essential nature, conventional military assets deliver the raw destructive power necessary to shatter their physical form beyond its capacity to regenerate. Orbital bombardment from Navy vessels provides the heaviest firepower available, with lance strikes and cyclonic torpedoes capable of obliterating entire regions. Titan legions bring god machines to bear, their plasma annihilators and volcano cannons delivering firepower that can stagger even demon primarchs. Artillery batteries fire blessed shells in sustained barrages designed to overwhelm the prince's defenses through volume rather than individual shot effectiveness. The coordination of these elements requires precise timing and clear command authority. A typical anti-demon prince operation begins with intelligence gathering by inquisitorial agents who identify the prince's manifestation location and assess the supporting forces. Grey Knights deploy to the target zone, establishing positions that allow them to engage the prince directly while disrupting their connection to the warp. Supporting Imperial forces, potentially including Sisters of Battle, Space Marine units, and Imperial Guard regiments, engage the cultist and demon armies that anchor the prince's presence in real space. Artillery and orbital assets stand ready to deliver overwhelming firepower on command, their targeting coordinates updated continuously as the battle develops. Inquisitors coordinate the overall operation, making strategic decisions about when to commit reserves and authorizing the use of extreme measures when conventional approaches prove insufficient. The First War for Armageddon in the late 41st millennium demonstrated both the challenges of combating demon primarchs and the effectiveness of coordinated imperial response when properly executed. Angron manifested on Armageddon at the head of a massive World Eater's invasion force, his presence transforming the Hive world into a battlefield that claimed billions of lives. The Demon Primarch's power exceeded anything the initial defenders could counter, with entire regiments of Imperial Guard annihilated by Angron personally. The Space Wolves chapter responded to the crisis, their wolf lords leading desperate defensive actions that slowed, but could not stop the World Eater's advance. The situation grew increasingly dire as Angron's rampage threatened to corrupt the entire world beyond any hope of recovery. The Grey Knight's intervention proved decisive in turning the tide of battle. Multiple brotherhoods deployed to Armageddon, bringing the specialized capabilities necessary to confront a Demon Primarch. The Grey Knights engaged Angron directly in battles that saw entire squads of these elite warriors fall to the Primarch's rage before their combined psychic might finally weaken his manifestation sufficiently. The chapter's Supreme Grandmaster led the final confrontation, wielding ancient weapons and channeling psychic power that matched Angron's demonic strength. The battle lasted hours, with the Supreme Grandmaster sustaining wounds that would have killed any normal space marine multiple times over. His faith in the Emperor and mastery of anti-demon techniques finally created the opening necessary to banish Angron, the Demon Primarch's form, dissolving as his connection to real space shattered under sustained psychic assault. The cost of this victory highlighted the grim reality of fighting demon princes at the highest power levels. The Grey Knights lost over 100 battle brothers in the campaign, casualties that represented a significant portion of the chapter's strength. The Space Wolves sustained even heavier losses, with entire great companies reduced to fragments of their original size. The civilian population of Armageddon suffered casualties in the billions, and the Inquisition subsequently ordered the survivors subjected to mind wiping or sterilization to prevent knowledge of chaos corruption from spreading. The world itself required decades of reconstruction and purification before it could return to productive service. Yet Angron's banishment prevented the complete loss of a strategically vital hive world and demonstrated that even demon primarchs could be defeated when the Imperium committed sufficient resources. The plague wars of the 42nd millennium provided another example of sustained anti-demon prince operations, this time against Mortarion and his Death Guard forces invading Ultramar. The returned Primarch Roboute Guilliman led the defense personally, bringing strategic genius and capabilities that few others in the Imperium possessed. The campaign lasted years, with Mortarion's forces transforming multiple worlds into plague-ridden wastelands before Imperial forces could drive them back. Grey Knights deployed throughout the conflict, their presence crucial in countering the demonic elements of the Death Guard invasion. The final confrontation between Guilliman and Mortarion saw the two Primarchs clash in personal combat, with Guilliman wielding the Emperor's sword, a weapon that burned with their father's power. The blade's touch proved agonizing to Mortarion's demonic form, and Guilliman's skill combined with the weapon's supernatural properties finally forced his corrupted brother's banishment. Notable victories against lesser demon princes occur with greater frequency, but often go unrecorded outside classified inquisitorial reports. The Exorcists chapter, space marines who undergo possession and exorcism during their creation to grant them resistance to demonic corruption, specialize in hunting demon princes across the galaxy. Their operations typically target newly ascended princes who lack the experience and accumulated power of ancient entities like Doombreed. The Exorcists work closely with the Ordo Malleus, responding to reports of demon prince manifestations and deploying strike forces designed to achieve rapid banishment before the prince can establish strong anchoring in real space. These operations succeed more often than not, preventing potential catastrophes by eliminating threats before they fully develop. The eternal nature of the demon prince threat stems from their fundamental immortality and the inexhaustible nature of chaos itself. Every demon prince banished from real space will eventually return, their essence reforming in the warp until they can manifest again. The time required for reformation varies, but the return remains inevitable barring true death or withdrawal of patron deity favor. Angron has manifested dozens of times since his initial banishment from Armageddon, each return heralding fresh campaigns of slaughter. Magnus has led multiple invasions from the planet of the sorcerers, his defeats temporary setbacks rather than permanent victories for the Imperium. Even demon princes who suffer catastrophic banishment that scatters their essence across the warp will eventually reconstitute themselves given sufficient time. This impossibility of permanent victory creates a strategic situation where the Imperium fights not to eliminate the demon prince threat, but merely to contain and delay it. Each successful banishment buys time measured in years or decades, periods during which the Imperium can rebuild damaged worlds and prepare for the inevitable return. The Ordo Malleus maintains constant vigil, monitoring for signs of demon prince reformation and preparing responses to manifestations that intelligence suggests are imminent. Grey Knights remain perpetually deployed across the galaxy, strike forces positioned to respond rapidly when demon princes appear. The Imperium's defensive posture reflects acceptance of a grim reality. The war against demon princes cannot be won, only endured. The constant vigilance required to combat demon princes drains Imperial resources that might otherwise support offensive operations or territorial expansion. Grey Knights committed to demon hunting cannot simultaneously participate in other campaigns. Inquisitors focused on tracking demon prince activity cannot investigate other threats. Imperial Guard regiments garrisoning worlds near the Eye of Terror or the Great Rift remain tied to defensive duties rather than prosecuting crusades into enemy territory. This defensive burden grows heavier as the Great Rift's opening created conditions where demon princes can manifest more easily and sustain their presence longer. The Imperium finds itself increasingly reactive, responding to demon prince incursions rather than taking proactive measures to prevent them. The psychological toll on those who fight demon princes repeatedly cannot be understated. Grey Knights witness horrors that would break normal humans, facing entities whose very existence contradicts everything the Imperium teaches about reality. The chapter's mental conditioning and psychic training provide some protection, but the cumulative effect of decades spent hunting demons leaves marks that no amount of preparation can prevent. Inquisitors who specialize in demon hunting often become grim and fatalistic, their understanding of the true nature of chaos stripping away comforting illusions about humanity's place in the galaxy. Even space marines from chapters like the Exorcists, who possess enhanced resistance to chaos corruption, find themselves changed by prolonged exposure to demon princes and their works. The grim reality facing the Imperium in the 42nd millennium is that demon prince threats have intensified rather than diminished despite 10,000 years of accumulated experience in fighting them. The Great Rift provides demon princes with unprecedented access to real space, allowing them to manifest in regions that were previously secure. The Imperium's resources stretch thinner as it faces threats on multiple fronts, limiting the forces available to respond to any single demon prince incursion. The return of Primarchs like Guilliman and the Lion provides some hope, as these beings possess capabilities that can match demon Primarchs in ways that normal Imperial forces cannot. Yet even their presence cannot fundamentally alter the strategic situation. The demon princes will continue to manifest, will continue to lead campaigns against the Imperium, and will continue to return after each banishment. The war against these ascended champions of chaos has no end, only the eternal struggle to survive each new manifestation and delay their inevitable return for as long as possible. The Imperium persists not through hope of final victory, but through the determination to continue fighting despite knowing that permanent triumph remains impossible. Each Grey Knight strike force deployed, each inquisitorial investigation launched, and each Sister of Battle who stands against demonic corruption represents humanity's refusal to surrender even when facing enemies that cannot be permanently destroyed. The demon princes will return, and the Imperium will face them again, locked in a cycle of conflict that will continue until either humanity falls or the chaos gods themselves are somehow defeated. In the grim darkness of the 42nd millennium, there is only war, and the war against the demon princes embodies this reality in its purest form.